On the M6 in Cheshire, 2 out of 4 lanes are closed northbound between junctions 20 and 21 from the M56 to Warrington for repairs after a lorry went off the Thelwell Viaduct, with queues back beyond junction 19 at Knutsford. In Suffolk, the A12 is partly blocked southbound between junctions 31 and 30 from East Berkholt to Stratford St Mary, causing queues. On the M1 in Bedfordshire, there's a lane closed northbound where someone's broken down between junctions 11A and 12 north of Dunstable, causing queues. In Pembrokeshire, the A477 is closed each way off the Honeyborough roundabout at Honeyborough after an accident, causing queues to and from Pembroke Dock. And on the M4 in Bridgend, 2 lanes are closed westbound after an accident between junctions 37 and 38 from Pyle to Margam, causing queues. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Please tell me that we're British. In our darkest hour, we can work around this. The beer will still be flowing at Christmas. Tell me, please.
Martin, without using bad language, there's no words to describe that this is another major blow to the hospitality sector. I wake up every day with anxiety thinking, what's going to happen to us now? Oh my God, now the weather's against us. Not only are the government absolutely battering us, then the weather's now hitting us as well.
Kate Stewart, this can only mean one thing. Prices, once again, going through the roof.
And there's nothing we can do. We have on costs. We have to buy from the brewery. We have the VAT. We have then the VAT, what we take. It is an absolute nightmare. To be in the pub game now, Martin, is very, very difficult. And there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Everything just keeps hammering us from every different direction. And obviously, we have to pass that on to the customers, then price increases. There's nothing we can do. We don't want to sell beer at an inflated price. We want it as cheap as possible to get people through them doors. But we have no option. They're going to go up again in the new budget. You know, there's no help for us. What are we supposed to do, Martin, except the only option is to close the doors and say, enough is enough. We can't do this anymore. I absolutely cry my eyes out having to put the prices up because you think, oh, my God, people are just going to turn away and walk. But we can't swallow the costs all the time, Martin. It's impossible for us to do because we will go bankrupt. There has to be, there's inflation getting hammered on us yet again, and we have to pass it on. I feel it when I take my children out for something to eat. You're like, wow, that has just cost a fortune. But what is the answer? The answer is the government needs to look at saving the hospitality sector and stop being so greedy in everything that they take away from us, or there won't be pubs.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning, 9:30 on Tuesday the 1st of October, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce. I'm at the Conservative Comms in Birmingham and Bev Turner in London.
Good morning. So some awful breaking news. This morning, a manhunt is underway after 2 pupils and 1 teacher were victims of an acid attack at a West London school yesterday afternoon. More on that to come in just a moment. Labour's freebie fiasco continues while the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, brings home a whopping salary of £170,000. It turns out that she also enjoyed hundreds of pounds worth of Premier League hospitality tickets. An asylum backlog. Migrants will continue to be housed in hotels for up to 3 years as the government acknowledges the scale of the problem. Leave Lebanon now. That is the message to Brits in the Middle East as the government charters emergency evacuation flights. Foreign Secretary David Lammy has warned that the situation could get worse.
Have secured places on commercial flights that are flying tomorrow so that UK nationals can get out. I urge them to leave.
Well, as the Israeli military begin a ground incursion into southern Lebanon, Hezbollah has responded with missiles and artillery into northern Israel.
And the Conservatives broke this law. Do you remember this? New tipping. Businesses are now banned from withholding tips or service charges from their staff. Is it going to encourage you to tip more, or would you never do it anyway?
And of course, we'd love to hear what you think. Send your views and your posts and your comments by visiting gbnews.com. You'll say, but first, here's the news with Tatiana.
Andrew, thank you. The top story. The Israeli army says they've begun a targeted ground operation against the Iranian-backed terror group Hezbollah, with artillery fires reported in the southern parts of Beirut. Hezbollah has reportedly responded with artillery fire into northern Israel. And the Lebanese Prime Minister has this morning described the situation as one of the most dangerous moments in their history. It's the first time since 2006 that Israel have had boots on the ground inside Lebanon. Now, this all comes as the UK government, has chartered a commercial flight to help British nationals leave Lebanon. The plane is due to take off from Beirut Rafik Hariri International Airport tomorrow, with vulnerable British nationals and their spouses, partners and children under 18 to be prioritised. Foreign Secretary David Lammy has urged British nationals to act immediately.
We'll do all we can to assist people to get out, and we have secured places on commercial flights that are flying tomorrow so that UK nationals can get out. I urge them to leave because the situation on the ground is fast moving, and of course, whilst we will do everything we can to protect British nationals, and those plans are in place to do so, we cannot anticipate the circumstances and the speed with which we can do that if things escalate in a major way over the coming hours and days.
Tom Tugendhat says he was extremely concerned by Tory leadership rival Robert Jenrick's claim that special forces are killing rather than capturing terrorists, saying it demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of the law of armed conflict. Mr Tugendhat also told GB News this morning that there's a very clear argument that defence spending should be increased towards 3%.
25 years ago, I joined the army and I swore allegiance to Her Majesty the Queen, and I swore to protect our country, and I have always kept my promise. And what I've done is I've served on operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. I've been in combat and I've seen what this country needs to protect ourselves. So today, what am I thinking about? I'm thinking about defence spending. I'm thinking about the fact that Labour is making us less safe by not investing in the technology that we need for the future. And so what you'll get from me as a leader is a leader who can decide, a leader who will serve, and a leader who will always act in the national interest.
Meanwhile, former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's slogan of "Stop the Boats" has been described as an error and unachievable by former Home Secretary and leadership contender James Cleverly. That's as he and fellow leadership contender Robert Jenrick prepare to face questions from the memberships at the Conservative Party conference today on day 3 in Birmingham. Mr Cleverly told GB News this morning that he's the right person to create optimism for the country.
About optimism, it's about a focus on the future, it's about paying less tax, it's about more jobs and better jobs. These are the things that I'm passionate about. These are the things I've always been passionate about. And if I become the leader of the party, I'm best placed to kick out Labour and get this country headed back in the right direction.
And as you've been hearing this morning, the Metropolitan Police have launched a manhunt for suspects after a suspected acid attack took place at a West London school. That's the Westminster Academy yesterday afternoon. 2 school children remain in hospital and a 27-year-old has been discharged. We will bring you more on this story as we get it. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Very good morning. Welcome to Britain's Newsroom, live across the UK on GB News. I am Bev Turner in London. Andrew Pearce is at day 3 of the conference. How are you holding up, Andrew? What's happening there today?
All fine, all fine. The atmosphere is pretty positive relatively when you consider the scale of the defeat that this party endured just a few months ago. I think they've partly taken heart from the fact that Labour are doing so badly. But as Lord Ashcroft's polling suggests, Bev, that doesn't mean the Tories are going to benefit from Labour's difficulties. They've got the reform, the spectre of Nigel Farage in the background. We're going to get today the Robert Jenrick, who's the front runner in my view, and Kemi Badenoch. They're going to do their hustings. They're going to be on stage with our own Chris Hope, our political editor, and putting their case. But I do think there's a sense here that Kemi Badenoch has been damaged by what I think was a gaffe over maternity pay. She did suggest, in my view, that maternity pay is too high, and that isn't the view of anybody else in any of the other three delegates, any of the other three candidates.
It's funny, isn't it, Andrew? We keep reading these policies which are now coming to fruition, which were enacted by the Conservatives. And there's the one today about employers having to pass on service charge or tips to their workers. I think that will go down very, very well with the public. And it is one of those success stories that Rishi Sunak could have claimed as his own if we were still heading to an election. It's so easy to forget we could still be in a pre-election period had Rishi Sunak waited until the autumn-winter to send people to the polls. Does that come up in conversation much at all when you're in a room of Conservatives, the timing of it, which still remains baffling?
All the time, people say, what was he thinking of? Who was he talking to? Who was he taking his advice from? We know he presented it as a fait accompli to the Cabinet, and any Cabinet minister who wanted to argue about it, he just closed off the conversation by saying, I've already been to see the King. It was job done. That's the constitution of this country, the unwritten constitution. Yeah, you can't have a conversation with a Tory without some rage emerging, whether they're an MP who lost their seat, or a canvasser, a candidate, or party members who were knocking on doors at the wrong time of year. It was the wrong time of year. They should have waited till October or November, and I think they'd have still lost, but it wouldn't have been on the same scale.
Yeah. OK, right, I'll leave you to it there in Birmingham.
Well, yeah, and a big moment here, because we're joined by one of the few Tory success stories. That is Ben Houchin. He is, of course, the Conservative Mayor for Tees Valley. You are one of the few Tory success stories, mate. You won. You hang on this year, all right, with a reduced majority. How can you win and the rest of the Tory party lose so badly?
Well, I think hopefully there are lessons that we can take from conference and my victory, which was about delivery. I think it's as simple as that. We didn't promise the earth, but what we promised we delivered on, and we made a real difference to people's lives. And certainly over the last 2 or 3 years of the Conservative government, we made promises that we didn't keep. There was obviously all of the issues around infighting, scandals, and then there was just a perceived lack of complete competence. And the Labour Party did incredibly well in tapping into that feeling that things just weren't working, the government weren't able to tackle the issues of the day. And politics for me is not rocket science. It is you do what you say you're going to do. Sadly, in modern politics, the bar is quite low. But if you stick to your word, you deliver, and people can see a tangible benefit in their lives, people will reward you for it. And that's why I think there was a disconnect from what we achieved locally compared to what we achieved nationally.
Do you think the Conservatives delivered on levelling up, which was a big pitch in 2019, a big pitch from Boris Johnson, and a big part of what you've been doing in Tees Valley?
So I think it was we delivered on it locally in the Tees Valley. That's one of the reasons that we were able to be so successful, because again, people could see the actual benefits locally of the money that we'd had, the free port that was set up, the fact that the Treasury are now based in Darlington. There are real things and jobs that were created as a result of Boris Johnson's levelling up agenda. I think it's fair to say the model that we created in the Tees Valley and with the government, we didn't do that across particularly the north of England and other areas of the country that are left behind as well. And so, again, that was one of those promises. There were huge hopes for levelling up. I think you can make an argument, to be fair to the government at the time, things like COVID, 3 months after Boris Johnson was swept to victory, completely blew apart his political agenda, of which levelling up was the number one thing. But people still have a right at the next election to look back and say, did you fulfil those promises? And again, even at the general election across the Tees Valley, we did relatively extremely well. We still lost a lot of seats. But if you look at the share of the vote, it held up extremely well because people did see a benefit. But actually levelling up elsewhere in the country was not seen or felt in the same way it was in my area.
I was talking to Bev earlier about the timing of the election. Inexplicable why the Prime Minister decided to go for an election on July the 4th. Do you understand it?
No. I mean, I was listening to your comments. I mean, I think everybody I spoke to, including myself, thought, let's see what happens. Let's deliver some more things. Inflation coming down.
Yeah.
There was some economic news that you could see on the horizon. It was going to be better. Interest rates starting to be cut. There was a cut in energy bills as well just in the last couple of months as well. I know they're coming back up again. But you would think
immigration figures are going to come down too because of changes to.
Well, we saw that, didn't we? It was particularly with legal migration.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because of families of students and carers, and Labour will take the credit for all of this.
Well, I think that's a slightly different point. I think people are savvy enough to realise that those types of things were not the responsibility. And actually people in the public, not politicians, not people at Conservative Party conference, when I go out in Teesside, people say to me, why did you call the election when you did? October, November, even a December election, given what Boris did in 2019, seemed like the obvious choice to us. And I think in reality, I mean, I haven't had a chance to catch up with him and ask him the question yet, but I don't know what was going through the Prime Minister or Rishi's mind at the time. And maybe in due course, after the new leader's elected and Rishi wants to set out his position, we'll find out what his thinking was.
whoever wins this leadership election, and I'm conscious, Ben Houchin, that you're not declaring yet for who you want to win, how are they going to cut through? Who's listening to the Conservative Party? They've had their most crushing defeat in their history, down to 121 MPs. I can remember how difficult it was for William Hague after the Blair landslide in 1997. Didn't matter what they did with William Hague, nobody cared, nobody listened. Well, is it going to be the same now? We've also got reform this time as well.
It's going to be extremely difficult. And one of the things that I've been asking for at this conference, and we get to see it, and as you said, you've got Kemi and Robert Jenrick on the main stage with Chappers later on. They've all said roughly the same thing. The high-level stuff around unity, trust, competence, recognising what we did wrong. Everybody kind of knows that, right? You know, people aren't stupid. We can see what went wrong. The question for the leadership contenders that none of them have been able to set out yet is how.
Right.
How do you create unity in a Conservative Party that doesn't know what it stands for at the minute? How do you get the trust and confidence of the country back? First of all, it doesn't matter who we elect in on the 2nd of November. How do we get the country to listen to us? You know, the country doesn't care that this conference is going on. They don't want to hear from the Conservative Party at the minute, and nobody's particularly bothered who the leader is. So whoever the leader is, their first task is going to be getting the public just to listen again. Not even get it back on side, but just to give us a fair hearing where we can start to establish what we're actually about, what a new Conservative Party is about. That's the biggest challenge, and that is something that we shouldn't underestimate. That's going to take, I think, years rather than weeks and months.
Which doesn't augur well for the next general election.
Well, I mean, the first challenge is May, and I think one of the chinks in the armour is that the Labour Party have done an incredible job of blowing up in the first 100 days.
They certainly have.
So the first challenge for the new leader is trying to build some foundations at local elections. Right. You know, they're the foot soldiers, the activists, the councillors, give them a bit of hope, create some more councillors out of it as a base to be able to build upon in the years ahead. That's going to be a challenge. There's not long left until that time period. But again, you were saying as well, you know, the energy is relatively positive at conference. I think we've got to interpret that in the right way. What I see from members is the energy is positive on the basis that they recognise the scale of the problem and they're enthusiastic about resetting the Conservative Party and having their say over the future direction of the Conservative Party.
And what is the future direction of the Conservative Party? I've only got a minute. So it says, in clear Ben Houchin terms, you're one of the few election winners here. What does the Tory Party have to do to re-establish trust with voters?
Well, one, it's going to be extremely difficult to do in opposition because you're not actually in charge of anything, which is why I think local government's really important. Elect councillors, take control of councils, deliver real benefits for people's lives, and start to get back to what we've always been good at.
What vision are you offering voters? What should the Tory Party be offering voters?
In general, we've got to go back to basic economic competence. I think we've got to be much more commonsensical on cultural issues, which is where people like Kemi do extremely well, and Robert Jenrick. I think we've got to look at issues around immigration, which I know all of them are talking about. But again, it's how do you regain trust when the public blame us for the current immigration system? And without being able to pull the levers to actually affect it, because we're in opposition, that is the biggest challenge that our leader, and whoever that is, going to be faces.
You think immigration's too high?
Immigration's absolutely too high. It's far too high.
Legal and illegal.
I mean, I do agree when you look at someone like Nigel Farage, who says historic immigration of all kinds was in the tens of thousands. And we've seen it balloon in the last kind of 15, 20 years, where more people have arrived in this country over the last 15, 20 years than we've had over the last 100 years. That is not sustainable. That's not about individual communities. That is about the ecosystem, the infrastructure and integration that cannot cope with that level of immigration in that space of time.
All right, that's Ben Houchin. Lord Houchin, I should have called you Lord Houchin.
Ben's fine.
Ben's fine. He is the elected mayor of Tees Valley. And up next, we're going to have the latest on the manhunt after 2 teenagers and 1 teacher were hospitalised after an acid attack at a London school. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're joined by Lewis Oakley and Esther Stanhope. And Lewis, let's start with free gear Keir, shall we? It's been the story of the week, and apparently it's led to, well, calamity in the polls.
Yeah, so he has dropped by 26 points in the opinion polls. And, I mean, it's just been sort of going down from day one. He didn't even start that high. But, yeah, this is just bad optics. As we say, like, he hasn't done anything illegal or wrong. Everything was declared, but at the same time, you're telling people they don't get their winter fuel allowance, and you're there walking off with your swag bag. It's just not a good look. And even, you know, I was thinking as well the optics of them trying to clamp down on MPs having second jobs. You know, any of those could turn around and say, well, actually, we have to pay for our own clothes. I just think it's just bad optics that he's had. And, you know, we've got those comparisons of Sunak in the stands. He's just sat amongst the people. And
Prince William goes to Villa games, albeit in the director's box, but it's not an 8k per game seat. And by the way, can I just mention, this isn't just an isolated Labour incident. Since the start of their tenure, they were accused of filling the civil service with previous Labour donors, previous Labour aides, people who worked for Labour Together think tank. The civil service is meant to be politically neutral, and they bypassed a lot of procedures to get people into their positions, not least the Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who parachuted Ian Caulfield, his name was, who donated £5,000 personally to her, and then he ended up in the Treasury with a 175k a year job. Yes, he did resign after it was revealed in the Times, but it does make you wonder, you know, you've spent years having a go at the Tories for this, and you do exactly the same thing.
Yeah, it's full of hypocrisy, and also the whole Sue Gray thing, and they were slagging off the Conservatives for not towing the line, and now they're being hypocrites because now they're taking freebies.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 9:49. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. So the Met Police have launched a manhunt after a suspected acid attack took place at the Westminster Academy School in central London yesterday. Our Home Security Editor Mark White is here with the details. Mark, it's so shocking that this is related to a school setting and that the victims are children. What do we know?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely sickening and an indication, if ever we needed it, about just how violent crime in particular is a real issue now, particularly affecting young people. And this was just before 4:45 in the evening yesterday when police were waved down by staff at Westminster Academy in West London, and they found a number of injured people, including the most seriously injured, a 14-year-old schoolgirl who we understand has suffered potentially life-changing injuries, still in hospital being treated, a 16-year-old boy still in hospital, less seriously injured, and a 27-year-old woman who was also injured. In addition, Bev, 2 police officers who were first on the scene were reporting feeling sick and were admitted to hospital as a precaution as well. At this hour, the suspect or suspects involved in this attack are still at large, so a significant operation to try and find those individuals or individual involved.
Do we know anything about this particular school, Mark? It's Notting Hill area, isn't it? It looks like a big comprehensive.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and like every school in an inner city in the country, they've got their issues. By and large, it's safe, of course, for school children to go to school, but increasingly they are at risk from potentially violent incidents because you now have a culture where it seems almost the norm for some children to walk about with knives, even guns, God forbid, but also with acid. There was a very significant increase, Bev, in acid attacks last year. A Freedom of Information request that was carried out by the Acid Survivors organisation, Acid Survivors International, showed that the number of acid attacks in the UK rose from 700 in 2022 to last year, going up to 1,244. And those are only the ones being reported. They believe it's being underreported. And Police Scotland didn't respond to this Freedom of Information request as well. So it's likely to be significantly higher than that. It is a real concern that people think not only nothing of carrying knives, but also taking with them regularly bottles of corrosive substances. And that can be alkali-type substances or acid substances, as in this particular incident. And how do you guard against it? They're household products that we see, you know, under the kitchen sink.
Terrifying. As a mum, particularly, as a mother of daughters, I find this so terrifying. We've imported this, Mark. Let's not skirt around the issue. We've imported this pernicious tradition from countries in which religion plays a part in wanting to shame women and girls, and some fundamentalist religions in which girls and women, young women in these countries, can be attacked with acid because it's to shame them, particularly in instances of infidelity. The sort of issues, actually, in terms of who's going out with who, affects teenagers. And in a way, I've almost been wondering when this was going to happen, when I was seeing these sorts of crimes amongst the adult communities, thinking at some point this is going to end up being on the doorstep of teenagers, and that's precisely what's happened. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. In particular, the Asian subcontinent, it is a big issue of acid attacks, honour, revenge attacks, as you say, for infidelity or whatever perceived injustice or crime some woman is alleged to have done by the male, who, you're right, throw acid over them because they want to get their revenge, disfigure this poor individual for life. And that has happened increasingly amongst a certain subset in the UK as well. And of course, we remember just back to the beginning of this year in January, and that horrific attack in Clapham in South London, where the woman and her 2 children had alkali substance thrown over them by Abdullah Zaidi, who later jumped in the Thames and killed himself, saved us the cost of a trial involved in that. But that's the kind of thing that you're talking about. And you're right, that filters down to street level, where kids just think they can do the same kind of thing, carry these substances.
It's very depressing, Mark. So there's a manhunt underway?
There is. No suspects in custody yet.
All right, let us know your thoughts this morning. gbnews.com/your say. First, though, the weather with Alex.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A drier day for most today, but there will still be some outbreaks of rain over eastern areas in particular, where there'll also be a cold wind blowing. The wet weather continued through the night over parts of Lincolnshire, Yorkshire, down across East Anglia and the southeast. Not as heavy as yesterday's downpours, but staying pretty grey and soggy here throughout, with a cold wind curling in from the North Sea. Much of Wales, southwest England, dry, bright and sunny, along with most of Scotland and Northern Ireland as well. And in the brighter spells, particularly in the southwest, we could see temperatures in the high teens. Feels colder than that, though, on these North Sea coasts, as I said, with the further outbreaks of rain and that brisk, chilly wind continuing to feed some showers in across Lincolnshire. Maybe some brighter spells this afternoon over parts of East Anglia and the southeast, but generally pretty grey and cold. Further west, we'll see some good spells of sunshine, a fine end to the day across Northern Ireland and much of Scotland as well. On the coast, again, a fairly brisk wind, but the wind's easing down generally across Scotland as we go through the night, and that will allow temperatures to fall away into single figures pretty rapidly this evening. We'll keep a lot of cloud through the evening and overnight across the eastern parts of England, a bit more showery rain pushing down across the Midlands, perhaps even into parts of South Wales for a time. That brisk wind will continue to blow. That will actually help to keep the temperatures up a little bit through the night in double figures across much of central and eastern England. But with the clearer skies further west, and particularly, as I mentioned, further north across Scotland, we'll be down into single figures. Could be a bit of mist and fog here and there first thing tomorrow. That should clear away. It'll still be pretty grey, I suspect, in the morning over central and eastern England. But the rain continuing to fizzle out. Some showers across Norfolk, Suffolk, down towards Kent and perhaps up towards the London area. So some showers here tomorrow, but elsewhere, most places dry and bright tomorrow. But some spots, particularly Wales, southwest England, a fairly gusty wind.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Perth and Kinross, the A9 is closed southbound at the A85 northwest of Perth for repairs after a lorry caught fire causing queues. On the A1M in County Durham, there's a lane closed northbound for repairs between junction 60 and 61 from Bradbury to Boban. The queues from junction 59 at Aycliffe. On the M18 in South Yorkshire, there's a lane closed southbound with a vehicle caught fire between junctions 4 and 3 near Doncaster causing queues. On the M6 in Cheshire, 2 out of 4 lanes are closed northbound between junctions 20 and 21 from the M56 to Warrington for repairs after a lorry went off the Thelwall Viaduct. The queues back beyond junction 19 at Knutsford. In Suffolk, the A14's closed westbound from junction 62 to 61 near Felixstowe because of a shed load. And on the M4 in Bridgend, 2 lanes are closed westbound after an accident between junctions 37 and 38 from Pyle to Margam, taking around 20 minutes in the queues. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
There's still good luck.
This Sunday, join me, Camilla Tominey, for an exclusive interview with one of the most controversial, influential and unique political figures of our time. Boris Johnson will be in studio discussing his new memoir, Unleashed, the gripping story of how he dealt with plotting politicians, problematic princes and a pandemic. From Boris bikes to Brexit and everything else in between. This Sunday at 9:30am, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Morning, it's 10 a.m. on Tuesday, the 1st of October, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce at the Tory Conference in Birmingham and Bev Turner in London.
Hey, good morning. So, some breaking news this morning. A manhunt is underway after 2 pupils and 1 teacher were victims of an acid attack at a West London school in Notting Hill yesterday afternoon. We'll have the very latest. Labour's freebie fiasco isn't going away. The Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, brings home a whopping salary of £170,000. But guess what? She also enjoys hundreds of pounds worth of Premier League hospitality tickets. And Strictly scandal. Former Strictly professional dancer Giovanni Panici said that he's relieved after the BBC cleared him of some of the most serious allegations made by Amanda Abbington, but she also takes the findings as a win. And the end of coal. Britain's last coal-fired power plant shut down overnight, ending our 142-year history of coal-fired electricity. Jack Carson has more.
Well, UK becomes the first G7 country to end its reliance on coal and power stations for producing electricity. I'll have the details as this power station is distinct from the grid.
And is it time to ban elderly drivers? I say no. A 96-year-old woman has become the oldest person in Britain to be convicted of dangerous driving, but she's avoiding being sent to jail after killing a pensioner, in a crash in Merseyside.
And of course, we'd love to hear what you think. Send your views and post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's the news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Andrew, thank you. The top stories from the GB Newsroom. The Israeli army says they've begun a targeted ground operation against the Iranian-backed terror group Hezbollah, with artillery fires reported in the southern parts of Beirut. Hezbollah has reportedly responded with fire into Israel. The Lebanese Prime Minister has described this as one of the most dangerous moments in their history. It's the first time since 2006 that Israel have had boots on the ground inside Lebanon. Now, this all comes as the government has chartered a commercial flight to help British nationals leave Lebanon. The plane is due to take off from Beirut Rafik Hariri International Airport tomorrow, with vulnerable British nationals and their spouses, partners and children under the age of 18 to be prioritised. Foreign Secretary David Lammy has urged British nationals to act immediately.
We'll do all we can to assist people to get out, and we have secured places on commercial flights that are flying tomorrow so that UK nationals can get out. I urge them to leave because the situation on the ground is fast moving, and of course, whilst we will do everything we can to protect British nationals, and those plans are in place to do so, we cannot anticipate the circumstances and the speed with which we could do that if things escalate in a major way over the coming hours and days.
Well, former British Army spokesperson Major Michael Shearer told GB News this morning that Israel have had no choice.
Israel are fighting for their very existence. Since October 7th last year, and the day after when Hezbollah got themselves involved in this, they've been raining rockets down on the Israeli family, 60,000 of which are now displaced in their own country as a result. I think Israel have got no choice but to deal with this in the Lebanon. I mean, they've given a year now for the Lebanese authorities to do something about it, who are clearly impotent and can't do anything and to influence Hezbollah at all.
Tom Tugendhat says he was extremely concerned by Tory leadership rival Robert Jenrick's claim that special forces are killing rather than capturing terrorists, saying it demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of the law of armed conflict. Mr Tugendhat also told GB News there's a very clear argument that defence spending should be increased towards 3%.
25 years ago, I joined the army and I swore allegiance to Her Majesty the Queen, and I swore to protect our country, and I have always kept my promise. And what I've done is I've served on operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. I've been in combat and I've seen what this country needs to protect ourselves. So today, what am I thinking about? I'm thinking about defence spending. I'm thinking about the fact that Labour is making us less safe by not investing in the technology that we need for the future. And so what you'll get from me as a leader is a leader who can decide, a leader who will serve, and a leader who will always act in the national interest.
Meanwhile, former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's slogan of "Stop the Boats" has been described as an error and unachievable by former Home Secretary and leadership contender James Cleverly. That's as he and fellow leadership contender Robert Jenrick will prepare to face questions from the membership at the Conservative Party conference today on day 3 in Birmingham. Mr Cleverly told GB News this morning that he's the right person to create optimism for the country.
About optimism, it's about a focus on the future, it's about paying less tax, it's about more jobs and better jobs. These are the things that I'm passionate about. These are the things I've always been passionate about. And if I become the leader of the party, I'm best placed to kick out Labour and get this country headed back in the right direction.
Now, in other news, the Metropolitan Police have launched a manhunt for suspects after a suspected acid attack took place at a West London school, the Westminster Academy, yesterday afternoon. 2 school children remain in hospital and a 27-year-old has been discharged. 2 police officers were also taken to hospital as a precaution after they reported feeling unwell. We'll bring you more on this story as we get it. Now, changes to the price cap on consumer energy bills that take effect this month following the announcement by the regulator Ofgem. A 10% domestic gas and electricity price rise has taken effect as debate continues over the withdrawal of additional support. A household in England, Wales and Scotland using a typical amount of gas and electricity will pay £1,717 a year from now, a rise to the annual bill of £149. It comes as winter approaches without extra cost of living payments for those on low incomes and as winter fuel payments are withdrawn for around 10 million pensioners. Energy firms have said, though, that they're helping struggling and vulnerable customers. And new rules have come into force banning businesses from withholding tips or service charges from their staff. Firms, including restaurants, pubs, hairdressers and taxi operators, are set to be impacted by the new law, requiring 100% of tips to be shared between employees from today. However, hospitality industry bosses say the move could hit under-pressure businesses with an additional cost. The law means that tips must be passed to employees by the end of the following month from when they were received. It is said that distribution of these tips must be fair in line with the Government Code of Practice published earlier this year. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. This is Bev Turner in London. Andrew is in Birmingham. Good morning, Andrew. Tell everybody what's happening at the conference today.
We're gearing up now for the big hustings. This is the last two. It's Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick, who are the front runners, actually. They're the ones most people expect to be in the last two, who will then be chosen by the party membership. So they'll be strutting their stuff on stage this afternoon, trying to... Badenoch had, I would argue, a tricky day yesterday over the maternity pay, so she'll deal with that issue. That will be an issue that will come up straight away. And Robert Jenrick will be challenged on his position on taking Britain out of the European Court of Human Rights. Is he really going to do that? Is he really going to take us out of the European Convention? Because a lot of people say if we do that, that will cause all sorts of problems with the Northern Ireland peace deal that Blair negotiated all those years ago. So they'll be the big issues today, Bev.
OK, super. Right, we'll be back with you in just a moment. But first, here in London, the Met Police have launched a manhunt after a suspected acid attack took place at the Westminster Academy School in central London yesterday. 2 pupils and 1 teacher are thought to be among the victims, with the injuries of a 14-year-old girl described as life-changing. Well, joining us now is former police officer Peter Williams. Good morning, Peter. We've seen these attacks become more and more common in the last few years in the UK, often imported from cultures in which religions wish to punish, or those people who are following those religions wish to punish particularly women for what might be seen as infidelity and these sort of honour crimes, has no place on British streets. How surprising are you to hear this happening in a school setting?
Well, obviously it's very worrying, and yes, you're right to point out that some years ago there was a rise in these attacks, but it was concentrated in a Pacific area, mainly London. And in the past few years, actually, the actual numbers happily have sort of decreased. I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One is the fact that there was legislation passed in 2019 that in certain circumstances it was illegal to possess this sort of material. But it's very akin to me to what we hear with sort of knife crime. And it's very much, I would say, a localised issue. I would anticipate in this particular case there will be an early arrest, given the circumstances, public area, CCTV, all those sorts of things. And it indicates to me that really, if we can re-establish our neighbourhood policing and links with the community, which would include schools, which include shops and all those outlets that sell this type of material, we can gather our intelligence and we can start to make inroads in these areas, i.e. knife crime, and in the case what we're talking about, which appears to be an acid attack. Now, I fully accept your argument that this may well be domestically motivated, and we'll have to wait and see what materialises. But I do think there's a lot that the police, with other partners, particularly the local authorities, can do in order to restrict or control the sale and the possession of these sort of obnoxious fluids such as acid attacks, thereby preventing them further in the future. So I think there's work to be done. We don't want to see anything like this at all. But it does appear to me, from what I've researched, that it is a particularly localised problem.
Peter, just help me understand this. We know from the police, I've got the Met Police statement here, that one victim is a 16-year-old boy, injuries are not life-threatening. Victim 2, 27-year-old woman, condition is not life-threatening, possibly a teacher, presumably, that came to the aid. Victim 3, a 14-year-old girl whose injuries may be potentially life-changing, and we know that the police haven't arrested anybody at the moment. Why would they not have given us a description of the suspect at this stage? Because there are people messaging us on the inbox saying, well, I live in that area. Who am I looking for? Who should I be keeping an eye out for? Why would they not give a description?
Well, I think that may well follow. I mean, we're probably in the early stages of an investigation. I mean, we're dealing with a very serious offence here. You know, at least one of inflicting grievous bodily harm, which is contrary to Section 18 of the Offence Against the Person Act, which carries life imprisonment. So it's not something that we can do lightly, and it's important that we gather the evidence initially, and then if it's deemed necessary or in fact it's going to progress the investigation, alert the public, then go to perhaps a press release. But it's also important, we've got to create a balance here, that we don't create a panic in the community where we sort of imply that there's somebody at large who's going around doing this sort of thing. So the police have got they've got a balancing act, they've got a management decision to make in order to what information they release and how they actually do release that. Is this a line of inquiry? Is it going to progress the investigation further? And is it going to lead to further evidence, which of course leads to an arrest and also a successful prosecution? So it's not just as easy as that, where it's a case of, look, we'll just go out to the public and say, this happened, what do we know? We need to gather the facts, and I suspect that that's exactly what the Metropolitan Police are doing now.
So in a way, if they don't issue a description, the chances are it's more likely that they know who it was. It does seem plausible in this situation. It's probably somebody known to the school or at least the pupils.
Well, I would, reading between the lines, I would say that that's the situation. But can I put this one to you as an example? We're not necessarily dealing with something as serious, but look what happened in July in Southport when social media went into overdrive. And they will be conscious of that. And there are guidelines now which have been issued by the College of Policing in the aftermath of the Nicola Bulley case of how the police service should start to learn to manage social media. We're not there yet at all. So this is something that the current investigators will be dealing in. That's why I said there's a management decision which they will have to make. But the inference is, I take exactly the point you're making, Bev, the inference is that the name and address of the offender or the offender's identity may well be known.
Yeah. OK, Peter, thank you so much. That's really interesting. Former police officer Peter Williams there. The police have asked anybody to contact Crime Stoppers anonymously if you do know anything about that awful, awful attack yesterday. Right, we're going back to Andrew Pearce now, who is in Birmingham at the Conservative Party conference. Andrew, and I believe that GB News is hosting the first debate between the Tory leadership contenders today.
Yeah. Well, no, October the 17th is the big one. We're going to be GB News is going to be hosting the debate with the two final shortlisted candidates, which will be a big moment for the station and a big moment because that could define which way people vote. And with me now in the studio is the Shadow Leader of the Commons, Chris Philp. You are a Kemi Badenoch fan, even after her gaffe yesterday on maternity pay, because she did gaffe.
No, I'm absolutely a Kemi Badenoch fan. I think she has that sort of undefined quality, the X factor, star quality, political charisma, which I think we need in our new leader to help us take the fight to Labour when we have a new leader in place. I think Kemi Badenoch has that. Besides, of course, authentic Conservative views, I think she has the potential to follow in Margaret Thatcher's footsteps, and those are the reasons why I am backing her.
Always dangerous to compare these women leaders to Margaret Thatcher. We had Theresa May and Liz Truss. You wouldn't call either of them a Maggie Thatcher figure, would you?
No, I wouldn't, but I think Kemi is different. As I said a second ago, she has that kind of star quality that I think we need to take the fight to Labour. And they've done such a bad job in government in the last 80 or so days. It is more important than ever we choose a leader who can beat them in 5 years' time. Because if we fail in that mission, it won't be a 5-year Labour government, it'll be a 10-year Labour government. And I think Kemi is best placed to win.
Is she right? Maternity pay is too high for women?
Well, I think she's been clear she's not going to be making any changes to maternity pay. The point she was making was a broader point, which is reasonable, about over-regulation of businesses, big and small.
Right.
Over the years, over decades really, regulations have built up and built up. Look at any individual regulation, you might think it makes sense, but the cumulative effect is that small businesses and large businesses are unable to be competitive, and we do need to be internationally competitive against places like Singapore and South Korea, and that is what Kemi is going to look at in opposition, work out a careful plan to reduce regulation and unleash the potential of our economy. It affects infrastructure as well. I mean, our new nuclear power station is going to be the most expensive per kilowatt hour of any nuclear power station anywhere in the world. Our high-speed rail costs more per mile than any other high-speed rail in the world. Thames crossing, the lower Thames crossing under the Thames, we've spent £300 million just on the planning documents. I think Norway or Denmark built the world's longest underground road tunnel for less than that, for less than we've spent as a country on the planning documents alone. So lots of reasons why we need to roll back regulation, and that's what Kemi will do.
When I talk to some Tory MPs, they say Kemi Badenoch is charmless. Is that a problem? Well, you need to charm people if you want to win a leadership contest?
Well, you do, and I don't think she's charmless at all. I think she's actually quite a warm and engaging person, and I think she has, as I said, that sort of star quality. And she is running second amongst MPs, only a couple of 5 votes behind first place, so very close. And of course, she's polling Andrew top amongst members.
Yeah, but Robert Jenrick is catching up. There's a poll today showing he's only 4 points behind Kemi Badenoch with party members. She was 18 points ahead, so she's beginning to lose this campaign.
Well, in every single opinion poll of party members, including that one, Kemi was ahead.
Right.
There was another Con-Home poll just a couple of days ago of party members where I think she was 13% ahead. So every single poll with party members, Kemi has been in the lead. And I think party members will be quite upset, possibly angry, if we MPs don't put the members' favourite candidate, Kemi, on the ballot paper in the final 2.
Right. Let me ask you finally, Robert Jenrick has made a big pitch on immigration. He says he's going to take Britain out of the European Convention, the European Court of Human Rights. He's also setting a target of how many people should come into this country. He was talking today about tens of thousands. We heard that before with David Cameron. The Tories have failed woefully on immigration, but Kemi Badenoch is not going to set a target. Why not?
Well, so firstly, it is true to say we did fail in government, speaking honestly, on immigration, and whoever is leader will need a detailed and credible plan to explain to the electorate how we're going to firstly stop illegal immigration completely and dramatically reduce legal migration. I think it's not enough on its own just to make single pledges. It's a more complicated question, and what Kemi has said is that she will develop a detailed plan to cover all elements of migration, to demonstrate to the public we've got a plan covering all of the bases, of which the ECHR is one, and she has said she is prepared, if necessary, to come out of the ECHR, and I endorse that. I've been an immigration minister in the past, and the ECHR does, in my view, unreasonably fetter our ability to do what is necessary to protect the country's borders, and Kemi is prepared to come out. But it's not just the ECHR on its own. That is part of the solution, but it's not the complete solution. There are other issues as well, the way that asylum rules operate, the way the court systems operate, judicial review, the list goes on and on. And I think what convinced me to support Kemi was that she is that understands it needs the whole system that needs sorting out, besides just one element of it.
All right.
We need to have a detailed plan to be credible with the electorate, otherwise they won't believe us.
That's Chris Philp. He is backing Kemi Badenoch. Of course, if she won, would be the 4th woman to lead the Conservative Party. The Labour Party, of course, still hasn't managed to find a woman to lead the Labour Party. What's wrong with Labour women, you would ask? Now, up next, does Britain need to crack down on older drivers? A 96-year-old who killed a pensioner in a crash has been convicted of dangerous driving, but she avoids jail. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Is the fact that electric blanket sales going up actually a good thing? This means that people are switched on to the problems that the winter might hold, that they might have some defence against it, or is it a real indictment of a Labour government that they aren't going to be able to, support elderly people in their hour of need?
Good morning, by the way.
Morning.
I think the sale of electric blankets may well be because we've had this cold snap because of the Arctic weather coming in from the north. However, I think it's an absolute reality that, as your clip said, that over 800,000 elderly people who are eligible for the winter fuel allowance, who can get pension credits, are struggling to apply. And so what is absolutely essential at the moment is that all of those older people who are eligible for pension credits do apply and do get what's owed to them. The benefits are owed to them. And the average that people will get through pension credits is about £78 a week. So that's definitely going to make a massive difference to people who are really struggling.
What can organisations like yours do to encourage people to, educate themselves on technology and make that first step into the digital world, which is very intimidating at times?
Absolutely, and that's what we do at Good Things Foundation. So we're a national charity. We work all across the whole of the UK. And in your clip there, you had Links Digital, and they're a member of what we call the National Digital Inclusion Network, which is a network of local charities, small local community organisations, food banks, job centres, old people's clubs. So anyone, any organisation at that local level.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. I am joined in the studio by political commentator Nigel Nelson of GB News, of course, and political commentator Piers Pottinger. Now, gentlemen, there's so many big stories in town this morning. It's difficult to know where to start, but I think we have to go to the Middle East first, Piers, because Israel now, having gone in on foot to Lebanon, signals the start of another phase of this conflict, which is potentially incredibly dangerous for the rest of the world.
Yes, I mean, it's the most dangerous thing going on at the moment, and everyone must be concerned about it. Having said that, on this occasion, Israel seemed to be doing a better job at trying at least to minimise civilian casualties, and they have been amazingly effective at getting the leaders of the terrorist organisation Hezbollah. What is also noticeable is because I think in part of the presidential election campaign in America, they're doing all this without the explicit approval of the American president, which is very unusual. Although Biden has sort of said he's approved of it, Biden really is only sort of the US president at the moment. The danger, of course, is the escalation. They've now also attacked the Yemenis, and Iran is rattling its saber very loudly. At the moment, that's what it's doing, rattling its saber. But the danger for escalation is colossal, and it's not a straightforward situation. I've just simplified it, but it's one that everyone needs to be very careful and cautious about. But the world is in a dangerous place, and from the horrible thoughts that the Labour Party, Labour government might reduce spending on defence in the forthcoming budget, which seems to be gathering momentum as a story that they will not increase defence spending as they said they would. is very worrying, because the world is not a safe place at the moment.
Is Benjamin Netanyahu acting with a sort of impunity at the moment? It feels a bit as though he's taken himself on as the sort of police officer of the world.
Well, certainly of the Middle East.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that what is interesting here is that President Biden did call for a ceasefire. Britain backed that ceasefire. They wanted 21 days for everyone to cool down a bit. I mean, the real danger here, and I think that Piers is right there, that we are facing a really sort of dangerous moment. But the tricky bit is what Iran does next. One would rather hope they don't do anything. But what they might do is use their proxies to attack, for instance, US bases in the Middle East. That would drag America into the war. And if America was in the war, we probably would be. So we all have an interest in trying to make sure that this is actually calmed down as much as possible. The Israelis at the moment have got a limited operation going. Let's hope it stays that way. But the trouble about invading someone's country is it's very difficult to get out once you're in.
Yeah. Right, OK, well, we're watching that situation there. Obviously, we will bring you any breaking news as it develops here on GB News with that incredibly tense situation. Gear change, though. It might seem like a frivolous story to be talking about Strictly Come Dancing, Nigel, but this BBC investigation has been going on now between what happened between Amanda Abington, the actress, and Giovanni Pernice, I think it's pronounced, and 7 accusations against Giovanni, 6 of which were found to have been upheld in this report. One of them which wasn't, that he was cleared of any sort of physical violence against Amanda Abington. But the way that some of the press are covering this story is as though he's got off scot-free.
Yeah, I mean,
that's very odd.
It is, and I think it's almost the problem with the result of this investigation, that both Amanda and him, they're both claiming victory. Yeah. They're both saying, oh, yeah, well, Amanda says, I was vindicated. It shows I was treated really badly on Strictly. He's saying, but I didn't do anything violent. That's been proved here. I mean, basically, it's a really unsatisfactory outcome. And it's all very well for the BBC to say, well, we put in extra measures to make sure that people aren't bullied. It would be nice to know exactly the detail of what those measures are. I mean, frankly, I wonder if the BBC nowadays, in the current climate, should be doing Strictly at all. It seems to me that there's so much other TV out there. The BBC spending so much money on light entertainment might not be the best use of licence payers' money.
Is it, Piers, a good use? Has it had its day, Strictly?
Yes, I think so. And again, it doesn't need to fight for ratings. It's a publicly funded broadcasting company, so ratings are irrelevant. And the show, I think, is tedious, and quite frankly, I'm not interested in it. But also this whole investigation. Don't forget, it was an investigation conducted by the BBC, who have a very poor track record when it comes to investigating their own employees or contracted artists. And all that seems to have emerged is that these two clearly didn't get on, hated each other. He was a bit of a bully. He was supposedly the teacher in the duo. And, you know, if people don't get on, they don't like each other, so what? Sorry, I don't think it's a big deal. And the thought that licence payers' money has been used for some prolonged investigation into something where simply it boils down to 2 people who didn't get on.
I mean, the report has concluded that she deserved an apology. Amanda suffered enormously. She got formally diagnosed with PTSD. Feels the BBC breached its duty of care guidelines by not protecting her sooner. It's hard to put a figure on how much she could expect if she can claim this is she might be able to get compensation for what she's been through at the hands of the BBC or in the care of the BBC. I think it's probably quite brave of her to have taken this case forward, though. She could have just dropped it.
And other people did.
A lot of them did,
yes.
Right.
And there were others who claimed this was going on but decided not to pursue it. She did, and good for her. I mean, so she should. She should stand her corner there. I mean, the thing about... I mean, I've only ever talked to a couple of contestants who appeared in Strictly. I mean, what they describe it as is a very punishing rehearsal regime. You really do have to be fit to go and do it. Yeah. And it's quite painful, but it doesn't mean you're allowed to do the bullying bit thrown in. It's a show. Let's not take take it too seriously.
Yeah.
Well, they'll have Philip Schofield on it next, you know. I mean, it's
He'd be
now...
lucky.
I mean, it's not a proper... It's getting more and more silly as a programme with the kind of contestants they have. Most people haven't heard of half the contestants, and it's just, I think it's a waste of licence payers' money, quite frankly.
OK. Right, Piers and Nigel, thank you so much. We will have more in the next hour. First, though, the very latest news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Bev, thank you very much and good morning. The top stories this hour. The Israeli army says it's begun a targeted ground operation against the Iranian-backed terror group Hezbollah, with artillery fires reported in the southern parts of Beirut. Hezbollah has reportedly responded, firing into Israel. The Lebanese Prime Minister has described this as one of the most dangerous moments in their history. Now, it is the first time since 2006 that Israel have had boots on the ground inside Lebanon. This all comes as the government has chartered a commercial flight to help British nationals leave Lebanon. The plane is due to take off from Beirut Rafik Hariri International Airport tomorrow, with vulnerable British nationals and their spouses, partners and children under the age of 18 to be prioritised. Foreign Secretary David Lammy has urged British nationals to act immediately.
We'll do all we can to assist people to get out, and we have secured places on commercial flights that are flying tomorrow so that UK nationals can get out. I urge them to leave because the situation on the ground is fast moving, and of course, whilst we will do everything we can to protect British nationals, and those plans are in place to do so, we cannot anticipate the circumstances and the speed with which we can do that if things escalate in a major way over the coming hours and days.
Tom Tugendhat says he was extremely concerned by Tory leadership rival Robert Jenrick's claim that special forces are killing rather than capturing terrorists, saying it demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of the law of armed conflict. Mr Tugendhat also told GB News there's a very clear argument that defence spending should be increased towards 3%.
25 years ago, I joined the army and I swore allegiance to Her Majesty the Queen, and I swore to protect our country, and I have always kept my promise. And what I've done is I've served on operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. I've been in combat and I've seen what this country needs to protect ourselves. So today, what am I thinking about? I'm thinking about defence spending. I'm thinking about the fact that Labour is making us less safe by not investing in the technology that we need for the future. And so what you'll get from me as a leader is a leader who can decide, a leader who will serve, and a leader who will always act in the national interest.
Meanwhile, former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's slogan of "Stop the Boats" has been described as an error and unachievable by former Home Secretary and leadership contender James Cleverly. That's as he and fellow leadership contender Robert Jenrick will prepare to face questions from the membership at the Conservative Party conference today. Mr Cleverly told GB News this morning that he's the right person to create optimism for the country.
About optimism, it's about a focus on the future, it's about paying less tax, it's about more jobs and better jobs. These are the things that I'm passionate about. These are the things I've always been passionate about. And if I become the leader of the party, I'm best placed to kick out Labour and get this country headed back in the right direction.
And the Metropolitan Police have launched a manhunt after a suspected acid attack took place at a West London school yesterday afternoon. A 14-year-old girl has been seriously injured after a substance believed to be acidic was thrown at her and two others outside the Westminster Academy. The girl remains in hospital with potentially life-changing injuries. A 16-year-old boy also remains in hospital with non-life-changing injuries, and a woman aged 27 has been sent home from hospital after also being hurt in that attack. And those are the latest headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. I'll have more news in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Up next, I'll bring you the latest from the Tory conference as Robert Jenrick is now within 4 points of Kemi Badenoch in a Tory leadership head-to-head poll of Tory members. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A drier day for most today, but there will still be some outbreaks of rain over eastern areas in particular, where there'll also be a cold wind blowing. The wet weather continued through the night over parts of Lincolnshire, Yorkshire, down across East Anglia and the southeast. Not as heavy as yesterday's downpours, but staying pretty grey and soggy here throughout, with a cold wind curling in from the North Sea. Much of Wales, southwest England, dry, bright and sunny, along with most of Scotland and Northern Ireland as well. And in the brighter spells, particularly in the southwest, we could see temperatures in the high teens. Feels colder than that, though, on these North Sea coasts, as I said, with the further outbreaks of rain and that brisk, chilly wind continuing to feed some showers in across Lincolnshire. Maybe some brighter spells this afternoon over parts of East Anglia and the southeast, but generally pretty grey and cold. Further west, we'll see some good spells of sunshine, a fine end to the day across Northern Ireland and much of Scotland as well. On the coast, again, a fairly brisk wind, but the wind's easing down generally across Scotland as we go through the night, and that will allow temperatures to fall away into single figures pretty rapidly this evening. We'll keep a lot of cloud through the evening and overnight across the eastern parts of England, a bit more showery rain pushing down across the Midlands, perhaps even into parts of South Wales for a time. That brisk wind will continue to blow. That will actually help to keep the temperatures up a little bit through the night in double figures across much of central and eastern England. But with the clearer skies further west, and particularly, as I mentioned, further north across Scotland, we'll be down into single figures. Could be a bit of mist and fog here and there first thing tomorrow. That should clear away. It'll still be pretty grey, I suspect, in the morning over central and eastern England. But the rain continuing to fizzle out. Some showers across Norfolk, Suffolk, down towards Kent and perhaps up towards the London area. So some showers here tomorrow, but elsewhere, most places dry and bright tomorrow. But some spots, particularly Wales, southwest England, a fairly gusty wind.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Perth and Kinross, the A9 is closed southbound at the A85 northwest of Perth after a lorry caught fire, causing queues. On the A1M in County Durham, there's a lane closed northbound for emergency repairs between junctions 60 and 61 from Bradbury to Boban, causing delays. On the M18 in South Yorkshire, there's a lane closed southbound after a vehicle caught fire between junctions 4 and 3 near Doncaster. It's taking around 20 minutes in the queues. In Lincolnshire, the A15 is closed southbound at Blybrook Grange after an accident. On the M6 in Cheshire, there are two of 4 lanes closed northbound between junctions 20 and 21 from the M56 to Warrington for repairs after a lorry went off the Thelwall viaduct. Queues back beyond junction 19 at Knutsford. In Suffolk, the A14 is closed westbound between junctions 62 and 61 near Felixstowe, and in Pembrokeshire, the A477 is closed at Honeyborough.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Oh yeah, my nephew was born there, yes.
It's 10:40, I'm Andrew Pearce here with you at the Tory Party Conference. I'm joined now by Olivia Utley, our political correspondent, and also going to talk to the Shadow Minister for Development and the Conservative MP for West Worcestershire, Dame Harriet Baldwin. But first, Olivia, a big coup for GB News because the big final TV debate between the last two, October the 17th,
Yes, we're really, really excited about this. So for weeks now, the Conservative leadership contest has been being narrowed down. There are 4 final contenders here at conference doing a sort of beauty pageant, as it's called. Those 4 will eventually be whittled down to 2 by the Conservative Parliamentary Party on the 10th of October. And then on the 17th of October, GB News is hosting a televised debate with those final 2 in front of Conservative members. Now, so far, it's the only televised event that the final 2 members are doing. So it's going to be absolutely essential viewing on the 17th of October. After that event, Conservative Party members will then have about 2 weeks to decide between the final 2. So that event on the 17th of October will inform members' decision. And by the 2nd of November, we will hear at last who the next Conservative leader will be.
There we are, big coup for GB News. Let's talk to Dame Harriet Baldwin. Dame Harriet Baldwin, actually there is talk that they may move the contest
not going to happen.
Forward. You don't think it's going to happen?
I know it's not going to happen, yeah.
Tell me why, because the suggestion is we don't want Rishi Sunak to respond to the budget, which is going to be a bad budget for a lot of people, in my view.
The timetable's been set out.
Right.
I'm part of the 1922 committee that's decided that with the party board. It's not going to change.
So it will be November the 2nd.
It will be November the 2nd. It will be Rishi Sunak responding to the budget, and it will be the current Shadow Chancellor who will will lead off the debate on the budget the next day.
Okay.
So I think that's in very safe hands, and it's not going to change the timetable.
Now, you haven't declared so far who you're going to support, and that's your prerogative. The question I'm asking everybody is, whoever wins, Dame Harriet, is how do they get the Tory message out there? Because the Tories were punished on July the 4th, the worst defeat in your history.
Yeah.
And people aren't really listening to the Tory party anymore.
We were, and we were punished in July, and that's why I was in favour of a longer process for choosing the new leader of the opposition and the person that I hope will be the next Prime Minister, because we need to make sure that this terrible Labour government is a one-term Labour government. And I think having a longer process with 4 candidates coming to conference has been a great way to see who's got that stamina, but also those skills and competencies to do that job for what's likely to be 4 years, but we want that person to be the next Prime Minister. And so a drawn-out process has enabled us to sort of see a range of those competencies. I think the right 4 candidates are here at conference to be asked questions by members, to be interviewed by your good selves on the 17th. And our job next as members of Parliament is to whittle the 4 down to 2 next week and send those 2 out to our members.
The Tories have lost trust on so many issues. We're the most taxed we've been in this country since the Second World War. Immigration is frankly out of control, legal migration and illegal migration. How does the Tory party rebuild that trust with the voters? What is the new leader going to have to do?
Well, absolutely. It's going to be for a 4-year parliament to do that, and so it's going to require that stamina and that vision. And I think the most important thing from my point of view is that all of us as members of Parliament, and there are fewer of us now, have got to unite behind whoever comes through this process, because what you heard from voters on the doorstep in June and in July is that although they appreciated that we want to bring taxes lower, and we had cut taxes on national insurance, that they wanted us to control borders, and we had got a plan in place to use Rwanda in that regard as a deterrent, that they also wanted us to unite in Parliament. So one of the things I'm trying to change at the moment is that 15% threshold where members of Parliament can send in letters, and I want to see that be announced before we announce the new leader, because I think if you have a higher bar, then it will be less tempting for one single member of Parliament to sort of try and undermine the leadership, and we've got to unite behind whoever comes through this process.
Because under that current process, 15% is all it's required to trigger a contest. That would be 18 19 MPs.
It's absurdly low, so we've got to change that before we announce the new leader on the 2nd of November. So that's something I'm working on behind the scenes.
And are you one of those who supports it's right that party members are involved in this process too? Because some of your colleagues will say, "Oh no, because we got trust from the members. We've got to keep members out of the process."
Far from it. I think members are an important part of the process, and I think what our responsibility is as MPs, and I've thought this in every contest we've had, is to send 2 people to the membership, both of whom we're happy to unite behind. And so I hope that this process enables us to do exactly that we'll send 2 people that we think will be excellent leaders of the opposition, and then the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom put an end to this terrible, terrible Labour government that in their first 100 days has shown what a disaster they're going to be for the country.
And just fine, do you think the Tory party can unite? Because this will be the 5th leader since the summer of 2019. That is an appalling record.
I think we can, and we will, and we must.
All right, that's Dame Harriet Baldwin, who's bringing important news too, that leadership contest is not going to be brought forward. It will be November the 2nd, just a few days before the American election. And of course, we've got that very exciting news that big TV debate with those final 2 candidates is going to be on GB News on October 7th. My hunch is one of them will be Robert Jenrick. I'm not sure about the others. But time will tell. Now, up next, Britain's last coal-fired power plant shut down overnight, ending our 42-year history of coal-fired electricity. Green campaigners are calling it a major achievement. Of course they are. This is Britain's Newsroom, live across the UK on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, Italian wine in Britain is worth a whopping £891 million and can be described as a Prosecco phenomenon, apparently. So joining us now to tell us more about why these Italian bubbles are so popular is Ed Smith, the founder of The Emissary, a British-based Prosecco brand. Good morning, Ed.
Morning, guys.
Thank you for coming in, and you've done just as we asked. You come laden with booze and bottles and glasses.
Exactly.
So the definition of Prosecco, Tatiana, you were saying earlier, is sparkling wine that's been made in certain areas of Italy. Which areas?
Exactly. So the Prosecco region is northeast Italy. It's about sort of an hour north of Venice, foothills of Dolomite Mountains. Very, very beautiful part of Italy. Veneto, exactly. Well done.
Show off.
Well, I'm half Italian, so...
well, there we go. OK, you should be teaching me.
No, that's it.
So, yeah, so like Champagne, that has to come from the Champagne region in France. Prosecco has to come from the Prosecco region in Italy. And it's different to Champagne and other sparkling wines, like English sparkling wine, in that geography, like we just mentioned, has to come from that region in Italy. The grapes that are used are different. So Prosecco has to be at least 85% Glera, which is the native grapes of the region. And it's most importantly the method. So Champagne and English sparkling wines use the traditional method, where second fermentation, which produces the bubbles, happens in the bottle. Whereas Prosecco uses what's called the Charmat method. So the second fermentation happens in steel vats. It's a much quicker process, and that's why Prosecco is a bit more affordable.
So the Emissary is a British-based Prosecco brand.
Yeah.
So is it made in the UK?
No, made in Italy.
Yeah, that's why you can call it Prosecco.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can't call it Prosecco unless it's made in those two regions.
Great. So can we get stuck into some of these? That's the most important
Absolutely.
thing of this morning.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Very good morning. It's almost 10:50. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Thank you for joining me. Now, I've been looking at what you've been saying at home. Andrew, obviously, is at the Tory Party conference in Birmingham. If you're just joining us, Andy has got in touch at home and says, I'm sorry, GB News, I can't make the Tory Party leadership debate. I'm washing my hair. I'm having my nails done. I'm growing some parsnips. I'm waxing my bikini line. I'm shaving my armpits. I'm baking a cake. I'm doing some DIY. I'm smelling some roses and mowing the lawn and booking my trip to the dark side of the moon. In other words, he'd rather do anything than watch the leadership debate between the potential leaders of the Conservative Party. If anyone's going to do it well, GB News is going to do it well, of course, Andy, just remember that. But I can understand the apathy towards who's going to win, because it seems like they're being completely incompetent, don't they, and utterly impotent. Alistair said before the general election, two short planks, Starmer and Rachel Thieves, repeatedly claimed there would be no other tax increases other than those they had already announced, and all their policies were fully costed and funded. And we now know that they lied repeatedly and knowingly. Even Starmer's freebies are not fully costed. His estimates fall far short of the real figures. It probably demonstrates economic illiteracy or maybe just a lack of arithmetic skills. A lot of you are not looking forward to this election in October. Jeffer says coal, not dole. What will we do when the wind doesn't blow, the sun doesn't shine, and we need that extra 10% energy? They will tell you that coal was responsible for less than 1% of energy production last year. That is the average. What about the days when the percentage was 10%? We could see power cuts incoming. Thank you, Jeff. Talking of which, it is the end of an era, because Britain's last coal-fired power plant shuts down at midnight last night, so midnight, first thing this morning. Number 10 closed Ratcliffe-on-Soar Power Station in Nottinghamshire in a bid to meet its green targets. Let's cross to our reporter, Jack Carson. Jack, it is the end of an era here, isn't it? It feels incredibly significant, the closing of this power station. What has this industry meant? What has this plant meant to the people in that area? And what do they do now?
Well, it's jobs, isn't it, at the end of the day? More than 100
and 50 people are going to be kept on at this plant over the next 2 years during its decommissioning process. Beyond that, the council are looking and working with developers and investment groups to try and turn this, what would have been, of course, Ratcliffe Onsor power station into a green energy hub. But you're right to say that this very much feels like the end of an era. Coal has been used in electricity generation in this country for more than 140 years, 50 years at the power station behind me with its infamous cooling towers that you can see that stretch out onto the horizon when you're in this part of Nottinghamshire. Now, the UK therefore becomes the first country in the G7 to end the use of coal in its electricity generation. If we look at the plans of other countries within the G7, France is set to phase out coal by 2027, Canada by 2030, the US by 2035, and in Germany they're not even phasing out coal completely, they're phasing out the use of what's known as brown coal. It's the most polluting fossil fuel by 2038. So the UK becomes the first country to stop its use of coal in electricity generation. If we look at how we've got here, since the early 1990s, coal has started to be reduced. That was very much by gas. Just over a decade ago, in 2012, 39% of the UK's power, on average, was generated by coal. 22, it accounted for power station, as you mentioned, is part of Labour's plan energy targets. At the
by the rain there with Jack Carson in Nottinghamshire bringing you that story. Let me know your reflections on the last coal-fired power station being closed. It does feel like a really significant day, and I had a little heart sink when he said it will be replaced by a green hub, as our electricity bills go up, of course, by 10% as of yesterday. So we are still to come this morning. We're going to have the latest in the manhunt. This is after this suspected acid attack at a school in London where 3 people were injured. We've just seen Jack Carson with an umbrella, so you probably don't have to be psychic to know what's coming next. It's the weather with Alex.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A drier day for most today, but there will still be some outbreaks of rain over eastern areas in particular, where there'll also be a cold wind blowing. The wet weather continued through the night over parts of Lincolnshire, Yorkshire, down across East Anglia and the southeast. Not as heavy as yesterday's downpours, but staying pretty grey and soggy here throughout with a cold wind curling in from the North Sea. Much of Wales, southwest England, dry, bright and sunny, along with most of Scotland and Northern Ireland as well. And in the brighter spells, particularly in the southwest, we could see temperatures in the high teens. Feels colder than that, though, on these North Sea coasts, as I said, with the further outbreaks of rain and that brisk, chilly wind continuing to feed some showers in across Lincolnshire. Maybe some brighter spells this afternoon over parts of East Anglia and the southeast, but generally pretty grey and cold. Further west, we'll see some good spells of sunshine, a fine end to the day across Northern Ireland and much of Scotland as well. On the coast, again, a fairly brisk wind, but the wind's easing down generally across Scotland as we go through the night, and that will allow temperatures to fall away into single figures pretty rapidly this evening. We'll keep a lot of cloud through the evening and overnight across the eastern parts of England, a bit more showery rain pushing down across the Midlands, perhaps even into parts of South Wales for a time. That brisk wind will continue to blow. That will actually help to keep the temperatures up a little bit through the night in double figures across much of central and eastern England. But with the clearer skies further west, and particularly, as I mentioned, further north across Scotland, we'll be down into single figures. Could be a bit of mist and fog here and there first thing tomorrow. That should clear away. It'll still be pretty grey, I suspect, in the morning over central and eastern England. But the rain continuing to fizzle out. Some showers across Norfolk, Suffolk, down towards Kent and perhaps up towards the London area. So some showers here tomorrow, but elsewhere, most places dry and bright tomorrow. But some spots, particularly Wales, southwest England, a fairly gusty wind.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the...
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Morning, 11 a.m. on Tuesday, the 1st of October, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with me, Andrew Pearce, at the Tory Party conference in Birmingham, and Bev Turner in London.
Good morning, thank you for joining us. So a manhunt is still underway after 2 pupils and 1 teacher were victims of an acid attack at a West London school in Notting Hill yesterday. Mark
Hello,
White
how are you?
has more.
I am, yeah. Nice to see you.
No one is in custody, but the Metropolitan Police are soon to release a description of the attacker or attackers.
Asylum backlog. Migrants will continue to be housed in hotels for up to 3 years as the government acknowledges the scale of the problem. Labour's freebie fiasco carries on while the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, brings home a significant salary of £170,000. It turns out that she also enjoyed hundreds of pounds worth of Premier League hospitality tickets. And Sunak, Trump's starmer, apparently in a fresh blow to the Prime Minister. A new poll shows that more people now prefer Rishi Sunak's government to the current Labour one. Do you fall into that category? And new tipping laws come into force today. Businesses are now banned from withholding tips or service charges from their staff. I thought, presumably, they already did that, but maybe they don't. Are you a waiter or a waitress? Do you tip? Do you understand how we should tip in this country? Get in touch.
And of course, as ever, we would love to hear what you think. Send your views and post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's the news with Tatiana.
Andrew, thank you. The top stories. The Israeli army says it's begun a targeted ground operation against the Iranian-backed terror group Hezbollah, with artillery fires reported in the southern parts of Beirut. Hezbollah has reportedly responded with artillery fire into Israel. The Lebanese Prime Minister has described this as one of the most dangerous moments in their history. It's the first time since 2006 that Israel have had boots on the ground inside Lebanon. This all comes as the UK government has chartered a commercial flight to help British nationals leave Lebanon. The plane is due to take off from Beirut Rafik Hariri International Airport tomorrow, with vulnerable British nationals and their spouses, partners and children under the age of 18 to be prioritised. Foreign Secretary David Lammy says the situation could get much more dangerous and has urged British nationals to act immediately.
We'll do all we can to assist people to get out, and we have secured places on commercial flights that are flying tomorrow so that UK nationals can get out. I urge them to leave because the situation on the ground is fast moving, and of course, whilst we will do everything we can to protect British nationals, and those plans are in place to do so, we cannot anticipate the circumstances and the speed with which we can do that if things escalate in a major way over the coming hours and days.
Former British Army spokesperson Major Michael Shearer told GB News that Israel have had no choice.
Israel are fighting for their very existence. Since October 7th last year, and the day after, when Hezbollah got themselves involved in this, they've been raining rockets down on the Israeli family, 60,000 of which are now displaced in their own country as a result. I think Israel have got no choice but to deal with this in the Lebanon. I mean, they've given a year now for the Lebanese authorities to do something about it, who are clearly impotent and can't do anything and to influence Hezbollah at all.
Tom Tugendhat says he was extremely concerned by Tory leadership rival Robert Jenrick's claim that special forces are killing rather than capturing terrorists, saying it demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of the law of armed conflict. Mr Tugendhat also told GB News there's a very clear argument that defence spending in the UK should be increased towards 3%.
25 years ago, I joined the army and I swore allegiance to Her Majesty the Queen, and I swore to protect our country, and I have always kept my promise. And what I've done is I've served on operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. I've been in combat, and I've seen what this country needs to protect ourselves. So today, what am I thinking about? I'm thinking about defence spending. I'm thinking about the fact that Labour is making us less safe by not investing in the technology that we need for the future. And so what you'll get from me as a leader is a leader who can decide, a leader who will serve, and a leader who will always act in the national interest.
Meanwhile, former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's slogan of Stop the Boats has been described as an error and unachievable by former Home Secretary and leadership contender James Cleverly. That's as he and fellow leadership contender Robert Jenrick will prepare to face questions from the membership at the Conservative Party conference today. Mr Cleverly told GB News this morning that he's the right person to create optimism for the country.
About optimism, it's about a focus on the future, it's about paying less tax, it's about more jobs and better jobs. These are the things that I'm passionate about. These are the things I've always been passionate about. And if I become the leader of the party, I'm best placed to kick out Labour and get this country headed back in the right direction.
In other news, the Metropolitan Police have launched a manhunt after a suspected acid attack took place at a West London school yesterday afternoon. A 14-year-old girl has been seriously injured after a substance believed to be acidic was thrown at her and two others outside the Westminster Academy. The girl remains in hospital with potentially life-changing injuries. A 16-year-old boy also remains in hospital with non-life-changing injuries, and a woman aged 27 has been sent home from hospital after also being hurt in that attack. New rules have come into force banning businesses from withholding tips or service charges from their staff. Firms including restaurants, pubs, hairdressers and taxi operators are set to be impacted by the new law, requiring 100% of tips to be shared between employees from today. However, hospitality industry bosses say the move could hit under-pressure businesses with an additional cost. And a lorry fell more than 60 feet from a bridge on the M6 in Cheshire. Police say the vehicle fell from the Fellwall Viaduct near Warrington on the motorway and landed on an embankment below. It happened at around 6:50 p.m. yesterday. It's thought the driver of the lorry hasn't suffered life-threatening injuries, luckily, and they were rescued by fire crews who lowered themselves down to the lorry. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good morning, welcome back to Britain's Newsroom live across the UK with me, Bev Turner in London and Andrew Pearce in Birmingham for the Tory Party conference. We just want to recap that great news for GB News on the 17th of October. Andrew, what will GB News be doing?
Well, it's really important. There's been weeks of negotiation about this. This is the big debate between the final two candidates who could, well, we don't know who it will be, but maybe Badenoch and Tugendhat, whoever. But the debate will be televised live by GB News with an audience of Tory party members. And I think it will be a defining moment in the contest because just a couple of weeks later they will be casting their vote. So that could be the moment. And it's a big, big moment for GB News because let me tell you, all the other broadcasters, the BBC, ITV, they all wanted it and GB News got it. So it's an important vote of confidence in the station from the Tory party hierarchy.
Good. Thank you, Andrew. We're back to you in just a little while. OK, the Metropolitan Police have launched a manhunt after a suspected acid attack took place at the Westminster Academy School in central London yesterday. 2 pupils and 1 teacher are thought to be among the victims, with the injuries of a 14-year-old girl described as life-changing. Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, is here in the studio with me now. Mark, a lot of people were getting in touch saying, why haven't the police issued a description of the suspect?
Yeah, understandable concern that no description has been put out there. Now, sometimes this happens because police have a positive line of inquiry. In other words, they know the suspect and who they're after. So either they don't want to sort of alert that person to the fact that they know who they are, or they don't need the public's help because it's only a matter of time before they get them. But I'm not sure that's the case in this particular instance because I've spoken to Scotland Yard and they say they are in the process of getting a description together to get out there. You might argue, well, why has that description not been out earlier, given that there's an urgent manhunt to try and find this perpetrator, or indeed it may have been more than one person involved in the incident. But a description is coming and we should be able to bring that to our audience within the next hour or so when Scotland Yard bring that, put that out.
That's interesting, Mark, because I initially assumed this is going to be somebody that's going to be known to the victims. It feels like a school incident that has got out of control, maybe. So when they didn't issue a description, I asked a police officer earlier on the show why that might be, and he said the same as you, that it might be that it's somebody that they know. But obviously now, with the description coming, that would suggest it isn't. Or maybe there is a suspicion, but probably, let's face it, wearing a hood, maybe wearing a mask, maybe wearing a big coat. Therefore, the police need confirmation of their suspect.
Yeah, I mean, all of the above. We're not privy to the sort of ongoing investigation in terms of the line of inquiry. Perhaps when we get this next news update from Scotland Yard, it will shed a bit more light on that. But what we can say is that it certainly appears that they don't definitely know who it is. They want to get that description out there to try to get one or more people brought into custody. We're looking at images there, Bev, of Westminster Academy. This is not far from where we are in West London. It was Alfred Road, that main road just outside the Academy, where this incident took place. 4:45 yesterday afternoon, when members of staff at the Academy flagged down a passing police patrol car, and the officers then found 3 people injured, a 14-year-old girl who was most seriously injured, still in hospital today with, we're told, potentially life-changing injuries, a 16-year-old boy still in hospital, less seriously injured though, and a 27-year-old woman who is has been treated for her injuries and released. In addition to that, some of the first police officers on scene were admitted to hospital after reporting that they were feeling unwell. That was as a precaution. And the substance involved, we're told, because these corrosive substances can vary, alkali or acid. They believe it was an acid substance that was used.
I'm just looking at the website for the school, Mark. it's a state school. It's obviously one of those schools that changed into an academy. It's a non-selective 11 to 18-year-old IB World School, so International Baccalaureate, I guess that is, school in central London. We provide excellent academic and extracurricular opportunities to students in an inclusive, internationally minded environment. Do we know if the school is open as normal today?
A good question. It's not. The school has told pupils to stay at home. They said in a post to pupils saying because of unforeseen circumstances. So pupils been asked to stay at home. Some of those will be able to be taught over the internet, as of course we learned how to do during the lockdown. So some staff are back in school today, but the pupils are not. Now, I understand that there's an emphasis at the school on international business in the studies that they're taught, but it's a mixed secondary school. And today, or at least for today anyway, those pupils are being kept away from the school.
Such a distressing situation for anybody that would have witnessed it as well.
Well,
all of the children in that school, they're terrified now.
It absolutely is, because, you know, we are grappling with an issue of serious violent crime in this country. And these scumbags that are going about just thinking it's perfectly acceptable to carry knives, even guns, think nothing, of course, of also carrying acid. And the number of acid attacks in this country has increased by 75% over the past year. Last year, 1,244 incidents that we know about because of our freedom of information requests, but actually likely much higher compared to 700 the previous year. It is a big issue.
Yeah. All right, Mark, thank you so much. We will let you know when we get that description of the suspect that the police are looking for in West London. Let's go back to Andrew Pearce.
But one that you're glad you did.
In Birmingham, he's already chatting as usual. You're on the telly, Andrew Pearce. Off you go.
I am. I'm joined in the studio by Patrick Spencer MP. He's a newbie. There are not many Tory newbie MPs because so many lost their seat. But Patrick won in central Suffolk and Ipswich, and he's here and he's backing Tom Tugendhat, the soldier. Quite an important time for a soldier. He's got a pretty distinguished military career to put himself forward as leader of the Tory party, Patrick, because we're living in very uncertain times. What's happening in the Middle East, Ukraine, Russia, China.
Super scary times for all of us, waking up to news this morning of what's happening on the Israeli-Lebanese border. It's not my area of expertise, but you're absolutely right. We need a leader of the Conservative Party who's got real credentials on the world stage. We need someone who knows what he's talking about. We need someone who's really got a vision for both the country on the international stage, amongst other things. I think Tom's that guy. I think he's done a really good job, by the way, of talking about his military background and why that makes him a good candidate for the job. But it's one of many reasons why I'm backing him.
There's a buzz about him here, I can feel it, and they're also very clever. Every time he arrives to pick something, there are dozens of his supporters there, clapping and cheering.
Absolutely.
Very cleverly stage managed.
No, it's authentic, it's organic.
It's spontaneous, that's the word I'm looking for.
No.
But he is quite a show, he's quite good, he's quite strong on presentation.
He knew he had to have a big conference. He's not come into conference as the favourite. He knew he had to be energetic, exciting, interesting. He needed to appeal to all of our members, all of our voters, those who voted Reform, also voted Labour, and voted for the Liberal Democrats. I think he's done a great job at conference of bringing the buzz, bringing the excitement, bringing the energy, and we're only halfway through, so I'm sure there's more to come.
Now, you're a new MP. You would have felt on the doorstep. You saw what happened in the election on July the 4th. The country are sick to the back teeth of the Conservatives, 14 years in power. You didn't deliver on immigration. You were hopeless on taxation. How can you turn this round?
Well, the most important thing I've been saying to people is it's utterly possible to go from a defeat that was chronic and terrible to a position where we can be back in power. There were loads of people in central Suffolk who didn't vote Reform. They just didn't vote at all. And they were, you know what, and we've been absolutely honest and upfront that we utterly failed on a whole load of things. We behaved poorly in government. We weren't conservative. We didn't deliver lower taxes. We didn't deliver lower immigration. We didn't really deliver safer streets.
What did you do?
Well, actually, I think there were some things we did well. We were talking off air about education. We did some really good things in the education sphere. You know, on PISA rankings, we've gone from being quite a low performer on the international stage to one of the best public state education systems in the world. We're giving children from poor backgrounds access to a better quality education than you can find in the private sector. And I think we should be really proud about that, because that's, that pays dividends for generations. And we did universal credit, which means we've got one of the most streamlined and effective dynamic welfare systems in the world. And for many of us who wanted to see Britain outside the European Union, I think it was the Conservative Party who should be proud to say, against the wishes of the Labour Party and the establishment, we took Britain out of the European Union.
Yeah.
So we did do some things right, but you're right.
You've done a great job with coming out, and I speak as a Brexiteer.
Do you think we've done a good job?
I don't think it's been a brilliant job since we came out. It's not the Brexit I thought we were going to get.
We need to go, this is going to take a long time.
Right.
We need to get back to lowering taxes, lowering regulation, becoming a more competitive economy outside the European Union. You're looking at a tiny time frame. We've got the post-Brexit story is only just
very briefly.
Yeah.
Robert Jenner has made a big issue of the fact he will take Britain out of the European Convention on Human Rights, which means no more meddling European judges.
Absolutely.
Tom Tugendhat says he's thinking about it. Can he just...
No.
Is he
He's not thinking about it. He said he will try and reform it, get opt-outs as the French do. He's got a nice point about the fact he's married to a French lawyer, a French judge.
Yeah.
They have opt-outs. We should have them as well. If that's not possible, yes, we're out. And he's been upfront and honest about that since the very beginning.
All right, that's Patrick Spencer. First time in the GB News studio, though we have had him on the programme before. He is one of the Tory newbies, 24 new Tory MPs, he's one of them. Up next, is Kemi Badenoch really Margaret Thatcher II? No, in my view, but she seems to think so. Find out more in just a moment. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
My kingdom for a voice. Scientists have, I can't believe this story, scientists have incredibly recreated the voice of Richard III using both his skull shape and a knowledge of medieval speech patterns. Me neither. The result is that the king, who was famously killed at the Battle of Bosworth in 1485, would have spoken in English close to that of a man from modern-day Yorkshire or Somerset. Let's take a listen.
The sun shines with no less licht and splendour, nor does it suffer any diminution of its strength.
Let's discuss this further with Yvonne Morley-Chisholm, the voice coach behind the project, who spent 10 years researching how the monarch would have sounded. Yvonne, you can probably see from my face, I have no idea how this works. Can you enlighten me as to what all this is about?
Yes, thank you very much indeed, Dawn. So I had a mad idea 10 years ago. I normally work with actors where we have a recording of a historical person, and we do something called vocal profiling to train the actor who's going to be performing on stage or screen to move their tongue tip, their jaw, their lips, everything, and get behind the personality of who they're playing. We obviously have quite a lot of that missing from Richard. We don't have a recording of him, but I wondered how far we could go. And a key player in this has been and is Professor Caroline Wilkinson, who over a decade ago created his face, first of all, from his skull. Now, on the day we, as Shakespeare would say, shuffle off our mortal coil, every little dent and dimple in the bones says how fit and strong the muscles were. So I thought, OK, we know what his face could do.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back. It is 11:22. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Bev Turner. Thank you for joining me. Now, I am delighted to say that I'm not alone in the studio anymore. I've got GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson, here, and political commentator, a man of many talents, Piers Pottinger, with us in the studios. We're talking of just off air then about driving. There's this case today. I know this isn't on our list, but I think it's worth touching upon, of the lady who's 96 who had a car accident and has avoided jail, and it's kind of raised this issue of whether you should not drive over a certain age. Do you still drive? Even though you're very old.
Even though I'm ancient, I still drive. But there are certain things that I don't like doing. I don't drive at night quite so often because I find that
dazzling lights.
Yeah, it's the dazzling lights there. My wife prefers to drive whenever we're going anywhere anyway, on the basis that I'm not very good in the first place. But yes, I mean, I think that it's right that you have your driving licence renewed every year after the age of 70. And if you're finding it difficult, no, don't drive. You're just a danger to everybody else on the road, apart from yourself.
How about you, Piers?
I don't drive. At the request of my family, I stopped driving quite a long time ago.
Really?
Because I wasn't very good at it. Yeah, I think when you get to a certain age, your faculties, however healthy and robust you are, they're still not as strong as they were, particularly when it comes to reaction. And therefore, I think it's right that they should be tested properly.
Although if you look at the numbers, it's still the youngsters ragging it around in their cars that cause more accidents than the elderly. And now, especially in London, when you can never go more than 20 miles an hour anyway, everyone's driving like a grandma now anyway at 20 miles an hour. I got a speeding ticket for doing 24 in a 20-mile-an-hour zone only last week. I know, it's ridiculous, isn't it? Anyway, right, let's talk. Should we talk about what do you want to start with, Nigel?
Well, I mean, as we're on driving, the motorhomes, I think,
this is quite
interesting. This tax that it may come in Scotland. At the moment, they've passed a law where they're going to charge what they're going to call a transient visitor levy. It won't come in until 2026. The rate has not been set yet. How it'll actually be done, but the idea is to try and, because they get so many tourists, to try and pay for the infrastructure that the tourists will use and all the various local facilities. You charge them a tax, but motorhomes have been exempt from this, and there's now a proposal that they shouldn't be. Let's include motorhomes as well. It seems to me just like a good idea.
This is going to be more tax on pensioners again, because it tends to be retired people who go. Who like the idea of the
Well, there will be
open
pensions. I mean, a lot of people actually do enjoy travelling around the place in motorhomes. So, I mean, also, you're not talking about huge amounts of money. Barcelona does this for visitors, and it's about £1 a night per person if you're staying in a hotel. So it's not huge, but that would actually build up into quite a big pot of money for the local authority.
What do you think, Piers?
Well, I think it's hilarious that the SNP, because it's an SNP councillor, with the splendid Scottish name of Jeremy Fernandez.
Very Scottish.
Who maybe came from Barcelona, where he maybe got this idea from, because the idea of the SNP taxing their own motorhome would be really hilarious. But no, I think actually Scotland needs more tourism, not less, and taxing visitors unnecessarily is actually counterproductive. One of the biggest problems with Scottish tourism is it's felt to be too unwelcoming compared to Ireland. They always compare Ireland to Scotland on the tourism front, and everyone says you get warm welcome in Ireland, a great crack, and it's great fun, whereas if you go to Scotland, oh, there's no supper after 6 o'clock in the evening, and if you're English, they hate you. And actually taxing...
Very cruel to the Scots.
Taxing people more. I'm Scottish, so I can say it. I mean, it is crazy, and it's a typical SNP thing to raise. when actually everything else that the SNP is doing in Scotland is a total disaster.
But Wales is thinking of doing the same thing, that they're considering a similar law. I mean, if you live in a place...
Well, the Welsh Labour government is even worse, if possible, than the SNP.
If you live in a place and suddenly every summer that you've got piles of tourists coming in...
Bringing money to your area.
I
if it was German
money, but it
camper
is
vans,
irritating,
fine.
and they are using up local facilities you've paid for through your council tax, and they should contribute something.
Well, I do think if you followed a German camper van down a narrow Cornish road for 2.5 hours, I believe taxing them would be the minimum we should be doing to particularly foreign camper vans.
That's not a bad idea, maybe. If you come over here with your foreign camper van, we'll tax you,
Yeah,
but not
tax the foreigners, that's
not
what
the
I
people
say.
who live here. Yeah.
Surprised you don't want an exocet missile if it's that troubling forward.
I wouldn't mind that as well, actually.
Right, what about, we just heard Andrew Pearce's opinion on this, whether Kemi Badenoch sees herself as Margaret Thatcher Mark II. Andrew said, I don't think so. What do you think, Pearce?
No. And these sort of comparisons are pointless. But she's the only one of these rather poor choice, in my view. She's the only one who's got some real bottle and is not afraid to speak in language and talk about subjects in depth in an intelligent way. She's by far the most intelligent of the four, but unfortunately she's perhaps the least diplomatic. She doesn't bring people along with her, and that's her failing, and it could cost her the leadership. I fear it'll be Robert Jenrick, who I think will have absolutely no impact on the party or the country. And at the moment, Nigel Farage must be rubbing his hands with glee, because as leader of Reform, I mean, he is looking more and more like the natural head of the opposition instead of any of these four. I hope Kemi wins. I really do. I'll be voting for her. If I had a vote, I would vote for her. And I do think that she is by far the best, but I fear it will be Jenrick.
What do you think, Nigel? Well, I think you're right. She is smart, Kemi, and she's and I like, you know, she's a mum of 3 kids, and she's, you know, working woman. There's a lot to like about her, I have to say, as a voter.
And Conservatives like feisty women.
Yes, indeed.
But there have been a lot of gaffes along the way. I mean, I think that going on holiday rather than contesting the leadership doesn't show you're being serious about it. Remarks like she's working class because at 16 she did a few shifts in McDonald's sounds a bit silly. She misspoke over maternity pay. I appreciate it's not what she meant, but it is what she said. And so it's things like that. I think that when you've got so many gaffes coming up, that's a problem. I mean, the Tory party have had enough problem with leaders who make gaffes all the time.
But I think the problem is, whatever, if we get down to Jenrick and Badenoch, as I think is likely, as the choice, whoever wins from those two will mean that the Conservative Party is split again. Yeah. And we will have the Tory rebels will re-emerge as a new kind of Tory rebel, and it's the last thing the party needs. And unfortunately, all the candidates have been behind the scenes briefing madly against each other, which they were not supposed to do, but of course they've done it. And actually, Kemi's gaffes have been magnified by all the others deliberately to damage her. And I think they're damaging their own party. I think they're very, very short-sighted. There isn't a whiff of unity in this conference.
Well, they've got to decide what they want to be, first of all.
Exactly, and I was just going to say, out of those 4 candidates, if you ask me their position on most major issues, I can probably tell you what Kemi Badenoch's is going to be, because I think in terms of her ideology and what she believes, her belief system is clear. And I'm not sure about the other 3, what they stand for.
Trying to move to the right, even though we all know he's a Remainer
but you get the sense
and
that, and Jenrick's to some extent also trying to move to the right to appeal to reform. Whereas you feel like Kemi Badenoch's natural home is there, and she's been very consistent about that.
And I mean, poor old Cleverly, you know, affable guy, nice chap.
No idea what he stands for.
But, you know...
that's stabbing.
Yeah.
Piers, Nigel, thank you so much. Tatiana Sanchez has your very latest news headlines.
Bev, thank you. The top stories. The Israeli army says it's begun a targeted ground operation against the Iranian-backed terror group Hezbollah, with artillery fires reported in the southern parts of Beirut. Hezbollah has reportedly responded with artillery fire into Israel. The Lebanese Prime Minister has described this as one of the most dangerous moments in their history. It's the first time since 2006 that Israel have had boots on the ground inside Lebanon. This all comes as the UK government has chartered a commercial flight to help British nationals leave. The plane is due to take off from Beirut Rafik Hariri International Airport tomorrow. Foreign Secretary David Lammy says the situation could get much more dangerous and has urged British nationals to act immediately. He's also called for an immediate ceasefire.
Our position remains the same. Having spoken to our American colleagues and other allies, we're calling for an immediate ceasefire. We need a diplomatic solution to the problems in Lebanon so that Israelis can go back to their home in northern Israel and Lebanese can return to their homes in southern Israel. So at this time, we want to see a political solution, the Amos Hochstein plan, which is on the table from the Americans, and an immediate ceasefire.
Tom Tugendhat says he was extremely concerned by Tory leadership rival Robert Jenrick's claim that special forces are killing rather than capturing terrorists, saying it demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of the law of armed conflict. Mr Tugendhat also told GB News there's a very clear argument that defence spending should be increased towards 3%.
25 years ago, I joined the army and I swore allegiance to Her Majesty the Queen, and I swore to protect our country, and I have always kept my promise. And what I've done is I've served on operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. I've been in combat and I've seen what this country needs to protect ourselves. So today, what am I thinking about? I'm thinking about defence spending. I'm thinking about the fact that Labour is making us less safe by not investing in the technology that we need for the future. And so what you'll get from me as a leader is a leader who can decide, a leader who will serve, and a leader who will always act in the national interest.
Meanwhile, former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's slogan, "Stop the Boats," has been described as an error and unachievable by former Home Secretary and James Cleverly. That's as he and Robert Jenrick will prepare to face questions from the membership at the Conservative Party conference today. Mr Cleverly told GB News this morning that he's the right person to create optimism for the country.
About optimism, it's about a focus on the future, it's about paying less tax, it's about more jobs and better jobs. These are the things that I'm passionate about. These are the things I've always been passionate about. And if I become the leader of the party, I'm best placed to kick out Labour and get this country headed back in the right direction.
And the Metropolitan Police have launched a manhunt after a suspected acid attack took place at a Westminster London school yesterday afternoon. A 14-year-old girl has been seriously injured after a substance believed to be acidic was thrown at her and two others outside the Westminster Academy. The girl remains in hospital with potentially life-changing injuries. A 16-year-old boy also remains in hospital with non-life-changing injuries, and a woman aged 27 has been sent home from hospital after she was also hurt in that attack. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. I'll be back with more news in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Floor here in Birmingham, although it's a little bit quiet. I'm going to try and get my hands on some snacks and a drink. They didn't give me any of that whiskey yesterday, did they? So maybe today. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Still further rain through the rest of the day across central and eastern parts of the country, drier elsewhere with the brightest weather expected in the west and most especially the northwest, Western Scotland and Northern Ireland as this area of high pressure builds in. But the low that we've had since the weekend is slow to clear, and that's going to bring more persistent wet weather through northern England into the Midlands and East Anglia. And in this area, the rain, heavy at times, falling on top of saturated ground, could cause further issues. 1 or 2 showers into northeast Scotland, West Wales, the southwest, but otherwise plenty of fine and bright weather towards the west. 16, 17 Celsius possible, but not feeling pleasant where we've got the rain and a strong wind continuing for parts of eastern England. And those outbreaks of rain carry on into the evening for East Anglia, London, the southeast. Spells of rain moving through the Midlands, parts of East Wales as well. And Northern England also seeing a few light showers. But Scotland, Northern Ireland, a beautiful end to the day. Plenty of clear skies. And as the sun goes down, most parts of the north will be increasingly dry. But we do have that rain and the thick cloud continuing across eastern parts of England into areas of the Midlands, the southeast as well, perhaps into central southern England at times overnight. With all the cloud in central and eastern parts, well, it's going to stay at around 11 or 12 Celsius, but a colder night to come for Scotland and Northern Ireland. A few mist patches and temperatures into the low single figures in some sheltered spots. But that's where we've got the brightest skies on Wednesday. Northern Ireland, Scotland, plenty of sunshine. And that sunshine extending into parts of Northern England as well. Still some showers for East Anglia and the southeast, but less wet overall. And for many other areas, it's a decent day. More fine weather to come on Thursday.
This Sunday, join me, Camilla Tominey, for an exclusive interview with one of the most controversial, influential and unique political figures of our time. Boris Johnson will be in studio discussing his new memoir, Unleashed, the gripping story of how he dealt with plotting politicians, problematic princes and a pandemic. From Boris bikes to Brexit and everything else in between. This Sunday at 9:30 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
So I'm walking about now on the conference floor. This is day 3 of the Tory Party conference. It's a bit busier than it was yesterday. People waiting for some of the big debates because we're going to go this way. We're going to hear from who we're going to talk to. Who are we going to speak to? We're going to talk to. Look, people running out of my way. Oh look, now there's somebody from this is very important. Epilepsy Society.
Hello there.
What are you doing with the Epilepsy Society here?
Yes, so we're here today to raise awareness of seizure first aid. Right. We've got our messaging here. It's very easy to support somebody through a seizure. Just remember, calm, cushion, call. And we know that a lot of people, Louise, who has epilepsy, knows a lot of people are afraid of what to do if somebody's having a seizure. And we know that 2/3 of the population wouldn't know how to support somebody. So it's really important to raise this awareness amongst politicians, councillors, the general public.
Very good. And you've raised lots of marathons for the Epilepsy Society.
I did the London Marathon and I raised £3,500 for the Epilepsy Society. That was the London Marathon and Great North Run combined.
Good for you. How many marathons have you done?
6.
Very impressive. Have you done any marathons?
I haven't done any, no. I'd love to, but fall, spinal stenosis.
Leave it to your daughter. But it's important that people like Louise is doing this for you.
Oh, absolutely, yes, because we do a lot of research into epilepsy, so the funds that Louise raises and other people really support our research and our helpline as well. We've got a helpline.
Good luck and very nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
Okay, lovely to meet you, ladies. Lovely to meet you. So let's keep talking. Well, let's go. Who else are we going to go to here? Let's see who we can talk. Some nice shoes here. You could walk a mile in some shoes, but I don't think we want to talk to any shoes. Let's go through here. We're going to go through the conference centre. Are you enjoying your conference, sir?
Yes. Yes, really good conference. Thank you very much. Yes.
Have you decided which candidate you're going to support?
I'm not going to say no. I don't know yet. I'm going to wait. No. I'm a little bit biased because I do know James cleverly, but I listened to the debate yesterday with Tom and the lady, and you say, do you really mean what you're saying? I'm looking for somebody personally that's centre-right, that's got, excuse my language, you shouldn't say this on, it's got a pair, what we don't want anymore, forgive me, because I do listen to you, as I said to you before, listen to what you're saying. We need somebody that's positive, determined, and can turn this party around. Not, let's do it next week, let's do it today.
All right, positive message. Nice to talk to you. We're going to go through here now because through here there's lots of commercial exhibitions, lots of stands. Yesterday we found some whiskey, and you know what? They didn't give me any whiskey, which I thought was rather mean. Let's see if we can come. So if we just turn to the left. Look to the left now. That's Jacob Rees-Mogg of this parish. He's talking to a fringe meeting. He's talking about campaigning. So we won't interrupt them. And over here, let's go to this tractor here. Now. Let's see if we can get on this tractor. Do you think they're going to let me on the tractor? I don't think they will. So look, this is to appeal to the farmers' vote.
Hello.
Is this for the farmers' vote? What are you doing here?
National Farmers Union.
Right.
Yeah.
So there is a trade union the Tories like.
We're not a conventional trade union. Right. We're actually an employers' association, but yes, the Tories do like the farmers and the National Farmers Union.
And do farmers still vote Tory?
You'll have to go and ask them directly that question, I think. But we had a fringe event last night where we had a pollster give a bit of an update on how the election had panned out in rural constituencies, and clearly there was quite a significant drop-off of the Tory vote in a lot of rural constituencies.
And this is a British. This is all British products.
Absolutely, 100%. We've got everything. We just had Tom Tugendhat on stand, having a little bit of Kent pear juice from his constituency, which he was very delighted to see. But absolutely, all British food. We've got a Massey Ferguson tractor here.
Yeah.
We've got a bit of an example of the sort of things farmers are doing, growing crops, looking after the environment.
Very good. Can I go in your tractor? Right, we're going to go in this tractor. This will be a first for me. I've never been in a tractor before. So let's see. Will I clamber in? I'm not going to break it, am I, or do anything?
Yeah, you're very welcome to. We've
right.
got lots of MPs clambering in all confidence.
Right, of course we have. So here we go. A first for Andrew Pearce in my journalistic career. I'm going to clamber into this tractor. Look at that. Look at that. Now, how about that? How about that? What do you reckon about that? You like that? Very good. Very good. So, I don't think I'm cut out for it. Don't think it's for me, really. I haven't driven a car for 20 years, so let alone driving a tractor.
You might find that a little bit,
very daunting.
A little bit testing.
Very nice to meet you.
Yes,
let's carry on. We'll keep going. We'll keep going. We're going to keep talking and walking. That's the Tory conference. What's going on here? Have we got one of the candidates is here? It's Tom Tugendhat. Yeah, so this is Tom Tugendhat. He's visiting the National Grid. Can we see Tom Tugendhat? So it's Tom Tugendhat.
Freelance journalist in Beirut in the late 90s. What you really need is a Scalextrics.
Exactly.
And we got all the best stories from that.
That corner's a bit.
That's me. Take it.
Did you have a Scalextrics as a child, Tom?
Andrew, I had a Scalextrics when I was a freelance journalist in Beirut in the 90s. And me and my mates would sit around in the evenings and play Scalextrics. And obviously get the best stories by inviting Lebanese politicians round to play Scalextrics.
What a clever way to get a story. That's Tom Tugendhat. Tom, one of our leadership contenders, playing Scalextrics. You're never too old to play Scalextrics, that's my view. Let's go. Should we go this way? Keep going. Keep going. Have we lost? Right, we've walked into another dead end. I'm pretty good at going into dead ends. So let's keep walking this way. So that was Tom Tugendhat playing Scalextrics. I played Scalextrics as a child, but I wasn't very good at it. So that's it from me. We're going to now go to a break. Goodbye from Birmingham.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Right, we're having beans this morning.
Beans for breakfast. There's no better breakfast, is there?
I like beans on toast for breakfast.
So do I. I would actually call myself a baked beans connoisseur.
Would you? Well, we can put you to the test. Tell us what the story is.
The story is, you might think beans, you might think Heinz. Heinz means beans.
Beans means Heinz.
Beans means Heinz. Heinz means beans. Who knows? So, of all of the supermarket baked beans, it is actually the Aldi supermarket version, this version over here, which came out on top. the Bramwell's baked beans, 76% on the taste test.
And they're much cheaper as well.
Much cheaper. Households can save, if you're buying 2 cans a week, £100 a year buying the Aldi version of these baked beans. So we thought we're going to do a blind taste test this morning.
Yes.
To see.
So we've got the Aldi beans, we've got M&S beans, and we've got Beans Heinz. So I think number 2 is the best one.
Yeah, I agree.
Right,
2 came first best for me.
So the Heinz is number 3.
Interesting.
Which was the worst one?
Which is the worst one, which is the ones, actually, I'll buy it home.
Do you know what? That's just proven it. M&S was number one. And Aldi was number two, which was our favourite as well.
I said M&S.
Yeah, and we both said Aldi.
We did say Aldi. I have to be honest, I was not expecting that.
I told you. This is the hill I will die on. These are the beans that I get at home and I love them.
At university, you get the tin that's half that size, and it was 21p for the store ones and 23p for Heinz baked beans. And as I say, the key was in the thickness of the sauce and how hard the beans were. They
actually are really nice. They're really. I am really surprised, and we buy more than 2 cans a week, so it saved me a couple of £100.
We get through 2 cans.
So you like the Aldi ones?
I like the Aldi ones. I'm shocked.
They're a lot cheaper. Yeah.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. I'm still recovering from the TV Gold, which was Andrew Pearce asking an octogenarian in a wheelchair if she'd ever run any marathons. But anyway, right. We are sticking with me for the next 10 minutes, I believe. New rules have come into force today, banning businesses from withholding tips from their staff. The hospitality sector, restaurants, pubs, hairdressers and taxi operators are set to be impacted by the change. Well, joining us now is bar and restaurant owner Kate Stewart. Good morning, Kate. So this is really good news for waiting on staff in restaurants and pubs. But we would presume that if we already give a service charge on the bill, that does go to the staff. Is that not always the case?
Well, in every venue I have ever owned, I have always ensured that staff get 100% of their tips. I think it's diabolical for any venue or any employer to even contemplate taking tips away from their staff. It's effectively stealing from them. You know, these people depend on them tips to make up the wages. It supports them, you know, it helps with staff retention, staff morale. I think, you know, it's much needed money that goes into their pocket, and it's given to them. If a customer gives a tip, it's for that person or, you know, for the bar staff as a thank you for the great service they've delivered, not to go into the business owner's pockets.
It mustn't be happening all the time, though, Kate, because if it was happening, you wouldn't need this legislation. So there must be restaurateurs who are taking that service charge and just keeping it for themselves or to run the business.
Absolutely. I mean, I was reading the newspaper this morning and there's big famous companies who are doing that and taking away the money from the staff. And I think they should absolutely hang their heads in shame. They've got no need to steal off the staff members. And yeah, it's really bad.
Would you say that owners of bars and restaurants, though, can pay their staff a smaller hourly wage, knowing that they're going to top it up, hopefully, with tips?
Absolutely not. No, that's not the way it should be, because I've noticed across venues that tipping is getting less and less and less. People are actually tipping, and you can't say to somebody, oh, you know, you can work for a less amount of money because you may get tips. What if they don't? They're coming into work to do a shift for less money on unguaranteed tips. So I think that cannot happen.
Yeah. It's a funny one in this country, though, isn't it? I think if you go to America, you know automatically the culture has been there for decades, and people will put on a 10, 15, 20, sometimes 25, 30% on top of the bill. But we Brits get a bit awkward around tipping, don't we, and what the rules are. And it feels like in the last few years, automatically the service charge is put on, and sometimes it is as much as 20%. Do you think we just need to clarify above, so we all agree on how tipping works, or is it still, do you think, up to the individual establishment?
I think it should be down to the person's discretion. To force a service charge on someone's bill can make someone, really upset, or they say, can you take that off? We do hear that a lot. We don't actually put a service charge on. We just say, it's down to your discretion. If you'd like to tip the staff, that's down to you. There is no clear indication. And it all depends on what level of service you've received as well. If you go into a venue and you've had bad service, you're definitely not going to want to tip. But more than likely, we're more bar, we're more wet sales. So you'll see the odd person given £1. And it's getting more harder as well to tip because of the card machines. It's very hard to be able to then take away the price from the card machine, how much is being took, there's processing fees. I just say to the staff, you get a tip, print the receipt out, we'll take the money out the till and put it in your cup jar. I always say to people as well, if you're going to a venue, or I do this personally, if I'm going to a restaurant and I'm paying my bill on my card, I'll always have £10, £15 in my pocket and leave the actual cash on the table and say, and make sure, I always check with the staff and say, do you get them tips? And they say, yeah, and I'm happy to leave it.
Yeah, me too. But what happens now then? You've got that awkward interaction where you might say, you get the bill, it's got a 10% tip on it, and then you have to say, can you go and take that off because I want to give you cash? And it's just, whenever I do that, my teenagers are just going, Mum, you're so embarrassing, you're so embarrassing. I say, yeah, but I can't guarantee that tip is going to go to the waitresses who've done a really great job. Now, with this change in legislation, maybe we can guarantee that it is going to go to the staff. So maybe it will take more cash out of the system again.
Who's going to man it, though? Who is going to man that them tips still go to that person? It's going to be very, very difficult to prove that when it comes to accountancy fees and when it goes to the accountants and stuff like that. So I'm not 100% certain that all tips will go to the service, even with the new legislation.
Yep, well, we have that. So we share that northern scepticism. Kate, good to see you. Thanks so much. Kate Stewart there. Right, that is it from me and Andrew in Birmingham for today. Next over to Emily and Tom. See you tomorrow.
Yes, coming up on Good Afternoon Britain, we are, of course, going to be flying you over to the Conservative Party conference, gearing up for a Q&A with Christopher Hope and Robert Jenrick. He's the one to beat at the moment, 4 points ahead of the next contender for that Tory leadership, and the only way is up when it comes to energy bills, isn't it? As we say goodbye to Britain's last coal plant. Lots more to come. 12 till 3, Good Afternoon Britain.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A drier day for most today, but there will still be some outbreaks of rain over eastern areas in particular, where there'll also be a cold wind blowing. The wet weather continued through the night over parts of Lincolnshire, Yorkshire, down across East Anglia and the southeast. Not as heavy as yesterday's downpours, but staying pretty grey and soggy here throughout, with a cold wind curling in from the North Sea. Much of Wales, southwest England, dry, bright and sunny, along with most of Scotland and Northern Ireland as well. And in the brighter spells, particularly in the southwest, we could see temperatures in the high teens. Feels colder than that, though, on these North Sea coasts, as I said, with the further outbreaks of rain and that brisk, chilly wind continuing to feed some showers in across Lincolnshire. Maybe some brighter spells this afternoon over parts of East Anglia and the southeast, but generally pretty grey and cold. Further west, we'll see some good spells of sunshine, a fine end to the day across Northern Ireland and much of Scotland as well. On the coast, again, a fairly brisk wind, but the wind's easing down generally across Scotland as we go through the night, and that will allow temperatures to fall away into single figures pretty rapidly this evening. We'll keep a lot of cloud through the evening and overnight across the eastern parts of England, a bit more showery rain pushing down across the Midlands, perhaps even into parts of South Wales for a time. That brisk wind will continue to blow. That will actually help to keep the temperatures up a little bit through the night in double figures across much of central and eastern England. But with the clearer skies further west, and particularly, as I mentioned, further north across Scotland, we'll be down into single figures. Could be a bit of mist and fog here and there first thing tomorrow. That should clear away. It'll still be pretty grey, I suspect, in the morning over central and eastern England, but the rain continuing to fizzle out. Some showers across Norfolk, Suffolk, down towards Kent and perhaps up towards the London area. So some showers here tomorrow, but elsewhere, most places dry and bright tomorrow. But some spots, particularly Wales, southwest England, a fairly gusty wind.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's still plenty. Check the close.